Doing it live on the Pontificators. Oh, hey, I am live. Hey, what's up, everybody out there in television land? It is RT Barrett, and we have Pontificators tonight. Yes, we have we have a great show. We were talking a little bit off air, and yeah, we got a lot to talk about. There's going to be some fun stuff, and it's really one of my favorite things about the industry is you find out how many people know other people. Like you might know this guy, but not this other guy, but this guy knows that guy, and so on and so forth. So we're already finding out there's a lot of really cool connections and things like that. So it's going to be fun. I hope you guys all had a wonderful, wonderful Christmas and a fantastic New Year. I love it here in Texas because they sell fireworks, you guys. They sell fireworks for the new year. So, I mean, it went on till probably 3 a.m, man. There was like a war zone over the trees here. It was absolutely fantastic. So all I had to do is sit, we sat outside. We had the little fire pit, and we're just kind of watching things go on. And it was a blast. There's a couple of gunshots too. Well, it is Texas and all. So I hope you guys had a fantastic time as well. 2024 is going to be amazing. I know Comicsgate talked a little bit to some of the creators, and there's a bunch of stuff on the horizon. I have a bunch of things on the horizon as well, and I'll be announcing those coming up. You guys will see. You guys will see. Be patient. And so let me see. Sign of life, as I always say. What is this? Britsky, the Great. Salute to the incoming chat. Salute to Art. Thank you. And one of the things I do want to mention is this is interactive, you guys. So if you have questions, you have jokes, whatever, just fire away in the chat. We always invite that. We always like that. So let's go back and forth. I mean, one of the things about these live streams is that we can do that. So let's take advantage of it. So Randy Howell, hail Pontificators, hail chat. Indeed. Oh, Joe Bernardo, aloha. Hey, who's this guy? I don't know who this guy is. Randy Howell. Oh, Cam. Good evening. Yes, good evening. Let's see. Any new? Wait, Pedro. Oh, there he is. he's here. I just wanted to check. Rob's here. All right, we got a full house, you guys. So I want to kind of let you know what we're going to do. We have a very special guest. We have Aaron Sparrow, and he's done so much in comics industry. His resume is quite long, and but one of the things we want to do is talk to him as an editor, like an ex-editor. He's not editing anymore, but I have I have a bunch of questions here, and I know the guys do as well, and answers I've always wanted, things I've always wanted to ask an editor, and I'm going to have I'm going to be able to do that. So that's going to be great. So all right, without further ado, let's get one of the mainstays of the Pontificators. We got Comic Book Bob. What's up?
What's up? I'm gonna start so much shit with this thing.
Hey, Bob, are you getting shorter? Like every time I see you, it seems like you're lower compositionally in the frame.
I'm being a little lazy. Yeah, I'm just kind of like slumping down a little bit. Yeah.
Well, you were there, and then you kind of went down.
Yeah, it's the chair that I'm sitting in, and it's kind of making me tilt a little bit now.
It's no problem. I just wanted to make sure you were okay.
I'm getting older. I'm shrinking.
I'm getting older. Okay. Well, without further ado, Mr. Sexy himself, Clint Halinsky.
Posture is important, Bob. Get those shoulders back. You sit straight in your chair.
Yeah, show off your moves.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year, chat. Happy New Year, Art. Happy New Year, Bob.
Oh, yeah. Right back at you.
2024 is going to be a banger.
A banger indeed. Well, let's get the next guy. This is my brother from down under. He's a little spice of life. We love him. He's a bit of a handful, and you never know what this guy's going to say. And it all depends on how much he's really been drinking. So, without further ado, the animator extraordinaire, Pedro Ang. What's up?
Pedro.
I'm going to be awfully quiet today.
Are you? What is that?
It's Japanese whiskey. It's really good.
Oh boy.
Oh shit. We're doomed. We're doomed. Chug, 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 chug. Oh shit. He's already drunk. All right. Well, let's get Rob, the greatest inker of all time. Did that work for you, Rob? Did that?
No. You got to go bigger.
You got to go bigger. The greatest inker the world has ever known, Mr. Rob Hunter. What?
You give me that title when no inker can get a job. How dare you, sir?
Well, I could never get you work anyway.
What
so.
are you doing? I'm now a penciler. I'm an illustrator.
You're a storyteller.
The greatest illustrator no one knows about. That no one knows about.
No, I can't say that because now I'm in that department and I can't give you that.
Join the fire pit.
I'll be
just jump in.
Yeah, I'll be generous, but not too generous. All right. Yeah. Well, we're lucky to get this guy. I think we have him for an hour. Speaking of inkers extraordinaire, I think all the inkers here are all storytellers. So we're all, multifaceted. So pencils, inks, writing, all that good stuff. So we're really happy to get this guy, Mr. Jimmy Reyes. What's up?
Guys, I thought we all agreed you guys were going to slouch down in your chair and I was going to sit up straight to make me appear to be taller.
Bob's on board.
Yeah,
Jimmy, you're standing up already.
I am. I can't get any taller. I was like, I thought you guys were going to slouch down.
You can't make someone who's only 3 apples high look taller, Jimmy.
Oh.
They do it for Tom Cruise. He in all his films. I thought you guys.
All I know is that Rob seems the tallest because his head touches the frame.
His
Look at this.
Frame.
I'm so great I can't even fit into my
Tom
monitor.
Cruise is made of magic and cotton candy, Jimmy.
All right, Marcel, Mr. Rob Hunter. All right,
Yeah, exactly.
you're miming it. I can't even do it. Yeah. All right. Well, this is awesome. This is a treat. I've done a couple live streams with this guy. I listen to him. He goes on everybody's chats or everybody's live stream, and this fantastic guy, very articulate, and has done quite a bit for this comic book industry. Maybe too much. I think maybe we all have done too much for this industry. Mm-hmm. Too much blood, too much sweat, too much pain, sleepless nights. But he, one of his claim to fame is working as an editor at Disney Comics, but he's worked as editor for Boom, Tokyo Pop, a bunch of others. And now he's got Creator Own as well, which we'll talk about in a bit. But one of the things is we're gonna have Mr. Aaron Sparrow put on his editorial hat, and we're gonna grill him as an editor. So I got a bunch of questions for him. I know everybody else does. So let's get Mr. Aaron Sparrow in here. What's up?
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on. By the way, Art, it is really nice to hear you say such nice things about me because as a punk kid reading X-Men and discovering your work and becoming a big fan, it's always a pleasure when I get to come on and talk to you and interact with you. I always get a little bit to that little bit of that kid energy comes back like ooh.
That was the nicest. That was the nicest way to call Art Tieber old.
I mean,
when I was a wee toddler, and we were
I wasn't
to read.
That young. I don't think I'm that far behind Art.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Art's
well, I wanted to be nice, but Jimmy kind of brought out the the edge. I just want to thank you for that. That was very nice of you. And I do think, when I said we've all contributed quite a bit to this industry, and we really have. You know what I mean? Like this industry, if it wasn't for the readers, if it wasn't for, because it's not the companies, it sure as hell isn't the companies that are going to use and abuse us. But it really is our commitment, time, effort, all that stuff, and just love, just sheer love for the art form. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm sorry, Rob. I'm putting Aaron right in the middle.
There we go.
Oh, I'm in the Paul Lynn square. I love it.
Yeah, you better be funny because that's the funny square, man.
No
Do
pressure.
my best.
Yeah, that's the hot box right there, man. So Aaron's in the hot box. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. Oh shit! Right off the bat, we got a super chat, Randy Howe for $5. Thank you. Happy New Year. Will Steamboat Willie appear in Black and White 3? He fits the color scheme. Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? That bastard talks too much. Get it?
Yeah.
Get it? Get it? It's a first talkie. Okay. All right. What is this? Wait. Lobo says, much love, Jimmy Carter. I mean, Reyes.
Oh,
What does that mean? Is that some kind of inside joke?
Jimmy Carter was tiny.
My father I have 5 brothers. So, but it came to me towards the end. They didn't know what to name me. So, literally, I was born. My dad looks outside the hospital window, sees a bus stop bench with an advertisement for Jimmy Carter when he was running for president. He looked outside the window and said, "Jimmy, that's what we're naming this one."
So you're named after one of the worst presidents we've ever had.
I say best president. I don't even know anything about Jimmy Carter, but I just say he's the best. I'm named after him.
Panama loves Jimmy Carter, all right?
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Jimmy Carter, Panama will not have the can out today. So,
Jimmy Carter likes gun.
You know, the funny thing is like everybody, Carter has that rep of being a very ineffectual, not very good president. And I don't think there's any one of us that wouldn't take him now over what we currently have.
Good God,
yeah.
It's all a matter of perspective.
You know what? I heard him on interviews years after his presidency was over, and he's got that Habitat for Humanity, and I used to always donate to that. And he said, as the president, there's so very little you can actually do as far as affect change, things like that. So he said with the presidency and the status he had, he feels like he's done more outside of the White House than he did inside the White House. I don't know if that's him trying to save face, but that's what he says. Yeah,
I think it's probably true. If you have to obey the law, and you have to work within the system, you're going to get very little done. There's a lot you can get done when you're running an entire criminal enterprise out of the White House. But that's
not only that, but I mean, as a president, you make like 400,000 a month, and negotiate
for a year,
billionaire. It's like, dude, like I need money for the campaign, and you please, like, well, you're gonna do as you're told, son. So I don't know. Being a president is not that effective.
You don't even get all the sweet insider trading that Congress gets. So, you don't even have that.
But the thing is, I think the president has some privilege to that, because some of these guys are making way more money than they should be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make it all after they leave.
I don't know Nancy Pelosi, but she is in the Senate, or was. She was doing pretty well,
Biden's net worth has doubled since he became president.
Well, there you go.
And he was already doing well as vice president, So
I'm guessing Carter felt like he probably affected more lives through Habitat for Humanity, like lower income people, building homes for people that need them. That probably has you probably feel the effect and see the results there more than actually just sitting in the White House and like looking at politics as usual. So maybe.
Yeah.
Well, look at all that money that went into California to house the homeless. How's that going, Aaron?
The homeless problem is worse than ever. Gavin Newsom promised to solve
it. For a Z.
Yeah, well, Newsom was going to fix it in 10 years, and in 10 years, it's basically doubled. And it is like The Walking Dead. A lot of the times, you go out driving anywhere, and more than once, I've almost hit just a methed out zombie that's just wandering across the street. There's no actual plan on how to help these people. There's no plan to deal with their addiction issues. It's they just throw money at this problem, but the way that they throw the money at the problem is they give money to friends of theirs, and the money never reaches the root problem. So, this is my big problem with that political party, is that they always want more of your money, but the money never fixes anything. And then they need more of your money, and then it never fixes anything.
And that's all Gavin Newsom. Yeah, that's all Gavin Newsom talks about is how much money he's raised. Like you notice, like even in debates and stuff, we've raised X amount of money for this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, yeah, but you haven't done anything with that money.
No, the problem's worse. You know, you've raised lots of money
Still there.
lots of money for your cronies and for your your friends that are on the take, and everybody gets a little slice of the pie. And I think George Carlin said it best when he said, if you wanted to see the homeless problem fixed, you had to figure out a way that all of the politicians could could slice up
Make money off
and,
it.
and skim money off the top and embezzle. Well, they've found that, but it's not fixing the problem, because the problem isn't in the cure. The problem is much like drug much like getting people hooked on drugs, the money's in the comeback. So
Hey,
there's a problem
listen,
going.
you guys are completely missing something great that he did. He fixed the fertilizer problem in California. Okay,
Hey, he was a peanut farmer. Yeah.
Yeah,
seriously.
human feces.
Gavin Newsom solved the manure crisis.
Mm.
Yeah,
He got more than enough to grow in everything.
that we weren't
Yeah,
having. Yeah, I don't know if I told this on the air, but one of the breaking points for my wife and I in California was a local supermarket. You always hear like a raid or like a bum rush or whatever it is. There was about 5 or 6 bums. They went into the supermarket, they just looted, and they ran out. Like when you have that many people going in, you can't stop them, right? And so my wife's in the supermarket while this is happening. She goes, it was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. They were just grabbing as much as they could hold, and they just ran past the turnstiles and ran out. Out the store.
I thought you told me your breaking point in California was when they raised the price of a quart of mayonnaise to $10. You're like, no, my sandwiches will not go dry.
No,
I'm
a
going to
Miracle Whip.
Texas.
Hey, Jimmy, I'm a Miracle Whip guy. I'm not a mayonnaise guy.
Oh, me too. I'm Miracle Whip too. Wow.
You're in
No,
Texas, right?
they've actually passed a law in California that the stores cannot stop people. Their employees cannot stop people from stealing. They have to just let them do it.
Well,
And
for
as a
a
citizen,
while-
you're starting to see citizens take the law into their own hands. They're starting to clothesline these POSs as they're trying to loot.
And then they're getting arrested.
But you got to get out of there then if you do that, because of course you'll be the one that gets arrested, not the person that was committing the crime.
Yeah. So how's that arm built up, Aaron? Is it pretty good? You get
it's like
moved down.
I'm not going to say that I haven't had to put a hobo in an anaconda vice once or twice.
Nice.
Gotta get that Stan Hansen lariat going.
This is inside the wrestling. I don't
Dip
know any
back
of
and
this stuff.
forth.
Yeah.
It's a hoss.
All right. Well, you know what I want to do is I want to give everybody in the chat and anybody who's going to come in later, like a little introduction of Aaron. So we're going to put the spotlight on Aaron Sparrow. We're going to get get a little bio, a little backstory, and then we can move forward with Q&A if that's okay with you, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything's on the table. So you guys can ask me anything, any questions you have about the comic book industry, my career, just abstract things, who I think would win in a fight, any of that. So
Jimmy or Pedro?
That's dangerous.
I discovered comics. I'd read like various comics that I'd been given when I was a kid. You'd go to your great grandmother's, and her neighbor would give her a big box of, Sugar and Spike and Archie digests, and so I knew that I liked the idea of comics, but I didn't really get hooked into regular reading until Marvel did G.I. Joe, and at the time I was getting into the action figure line. And I saw the ads on TV for this comic and went and picked up an issue at 7-Eleven. And then I was hooked. And then through there, you start seeing ads for like the X-Men and things like that. And you're like, oh, who's this character? Who's this character? So you got a little bit of extra allowance money. You're going down to the local liquor store, and they don't have any local AM/PM, Circle K, 7-Eleven, whatever. And they don't have Garbage Pail Kids in stock. You're like, well, what else can I buy? And so you make your way over to the comic spinner rack. And that's how I got into Marvel, and then from Marvel into DC, and just fell in love with comics and knew that that's what I wanted to do with my life. So when I got a little bit older, I was trying to figure out how to break in. And eventually I got a tip that Tokyo Pop was hiring for copy editors. And, I'm a very strong editorial, spelling, grammar, very very accomplished in that arena. So I applied, I got hired, and I started working there. And it was
I have to ask, what year is this now? Like, because Tokyo Pop was riding high there for a couple years, man. They were huge.
Yeah, early 2000. When I went, they were on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, and they had an entire floor of this high rise that was their company.
Uh-oh.
And so
too much money going out.
Well, I mean, at the time, tons of money was coming in. So it was like probably the first big manga boom in the United States.
I remember
early.
In the New York show, they had, it seemed like a whole like end cap, like they had carpet down. I mean, it was huge. They had offices set up and everything at the con. And I do remember I got the green light. Let me share this for Tokyo Pop to do. Let me turn this off. It's not too bright. It's called Rock and Robots. And so I remember talking to Tokyo Pop about picking this up. Man, that's really bad. But you get the idea. And that was a really amazing company. I thought it seemed like they were doing everything right. They were making money. They looked like they were successful. So that was early 2000s, right?
Yeah. And part of the reason, they're back. They kind of shrunk down and were almost gone, but still like that little seed germinating.
I'm sorry, because I'm reliving all this stuff. They even had like at bookstores like B. Dalton and stuff like that. They had an aisle, right, or like a section, like a Tokyo Pop section.
Yep.
Yeah, that was that was the first thrill of my career, was being able to go in and grabbing a volume off the shelf and opening it up and showing people like, my name is in this. Can you believe this?
That's a great way to pick
I
up
remember
chicks.
that.
But did it ever get you? Aaron, did it ever get you a date? Was there?
Actually, it did. It did a couple of
In your
times.
face, Jimmy. In your face.
Then it was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah, believe it or not, sometimes comics works out. It doesn't always break your heart.
Manga. It's just, girls go after manga more than they do like mainstream.
Yeah.
manga.
Hell yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
2000s,
Way better than your
they were
favorite.
reading.
I remember the first time I ever saw that something from Tokyo Pop was you guys remember Sunko's video?
Yeah.
They
In the
had
malls, right?
next to the one that I went to next to the Japanimation was what they called it back
Yeah,
in the day.
that's what we call it.
Yeah.
They had a section with manga stuff and like Western translations. So
Yeah, so that's what I started out doing. It was a really great time to get in. Tokyo Pop at that time obviously was riding high with the manga boom, but everybody that worked there in editorial, I worked for Rob Tokar, who was at Marvel and then had moved over to Tokyo Pop, and I worked for Mark Panicia, who was at Marvel, went to Tokyo Pop, and then back to Marvel, and he's still there to this day. Great guys to work for, just great mentors. Really loved comics. Really like helped me kind of understand what it means to be an editor. And they kind of took a shine to me. So I started getting a lot of copy edit work. One other person I want to mention, Jill Freshney, Bryce Coleman, Paul Morrissey, Louis Reyes, all great guys to work for there at the time. But they kind of took a shine to me, and I had started turning in my copy edits with notes just about, hey, this sentence is kind of clunky. I would, consider rewording it like this, just to get the point across. This culturally kind of doesn't translate very well. So, here's a way that we could probably do it where it comes across a little bit better and is a little more understandable to Western audiences. And they really liked that, because at the time they were paying a translator and then a localizer and then a copy editor. And so they're like, well, we can just give you the translation and you can do both. And so I ended up picking up a lot of work there and was there for a few years.
So wait, all of a sudden, Aaron, you doubled your income, right?
Yeah. Oh, I was making so much money at Tokyo Pop. It was great for not a lot of work, because you were paid. I think it was $500 per volume to do the localization and the copy edit. And
also, you were kind of working as a freelance more than a staffer.
Yeah, I was freelance.
Oh, okay.
I was never officially on staff. It was always freelance, but I would go into the office 2-3 days a week. I would pick stuff. I'd work there for the 8 hours that I was there, 10 hours. Then afterwards, there's a big camaraderie, big group of enthusiastic people. You'd go out and you'd get drinks and you'd, have conversations about all this stuff. At lunchtime, you'd run to the comic book store on Wednesdays. It was always cool to go into the office on Wednesdays because you knew at lunch you were going to the comic book store to get your new comics. And then I'd take stuff home and I'd work on it. So I was doing 8 to 10 books per month at $500 a pop, which was not bad money at the time.
No.
Would be great money today.
Was it difficult at all to edit the translation? Did you have to did it require that you could read or write any Japanese?
No, it was basically that was already done by the translator. It's just it would normally go translator to localizer and then for a copy edit. And they realized they could eliminate the middle by having me do the localization and then the.
So you made more money by eliminating 2 other positions.
When you're doing
there you go. That's
when
the
you're-
comic book way.
it's that wrestling background. He came in and got rid of one player. But
That's right. Guy.
when you're editing though the English translation, are you worried that anything would be lost in translation? And especially, since you have to adapt it to a different culture and not speaking the Japanese language, was there any chance?
I think the hardest part, Jimmy, would be
That's what
reading
you
in
do.
reverse.
This is
Like
what
you're reading in reverse.
You gotta read it backwards. Yeah.
It's just like Zatanna.
I'm afraid this can get racist really, really
So
easy.
did you feel that? How did you edit without affecting anything in the story? Anything?
Well,
getting
that was the really interesting part because on some things you had licensors who were saying, we want this to be as close to the translation as possible, as close to the original intent of the author, which was something that I always tried to respect. And then other times you would have the company say, like when I did Devil May Cry, for example, they came back and they were like, we really want this pumped up. We want this to kind of match the, we want Dante to be this sardonic, kind of sarcastic, above it all hero. That's kind of like the direction we're going in the game. The manga isn't really that way. We, for your audience, we want it to match this way. So, it really depended on what the licensor wanted. And, so I always tried to hew to that. And if they wanted it to be as close to the source material as possible, then I didn't try to put in any of my own dialogue or any kind of like cute little, clever bon mots or anything. I would always try to like, okay, what's the author trying to say here? And
But
do it in an
Tokyo
entertaining
Pop
way.
also they were developing new IP and bringing stuff over as well, right? Because I remember talking. I think it was you said his name, the Marvel guy. I remember talking to him at the New York show when I with the Rock Robots, and he was saying that they were actively looking for like new IP, and so the idea is like they would bring the Japanese stuff over to the U.S. and then the U.S. would bring stuff over to the Japanese market. Is that kind of what the concept was?
I don't know that the American to Japanese portion of that ever really happened.
Okay.
But the idea is that as manga was getting bigger and it was getting bigger, and you had Viz and competition, you had a couple of different companies out there, and they were all vying for these properties to where it became kind of a feeding frenzy, and even your lesser properties were getting gobbled up and thrown out to the American audience. I think the idea became, well, we should develop some in-house stuff that we own that we can then, pitch to movie companies and things like that, and get cartoon series and all of these things, because they were doing like Initial D and they were doing the localization of that. And so they really saw the way that the market was expanding and the way that it could be leveraged before any of these other companies got in and started doing it. So yeah, they I think one book that I remember is Bizengast that they did, which was a popular one. There was one called Dramacon, some of the American manga that I remember that they did, which was about the drama at a comic convention and some star-crossed characters. So I don't remember a lot of it, but at the time it was a big initiative, and yeah, Mark Panizia was heading that up. So I'm sure that's what he talked to.
They did a lot of like video game and movie and TV tie-in stuff too, because like they did Warcraft. They did Ragnarok Online. I think didn't they do Ghostbusters?
I don't remember if they did Ghostbusters. I know at one point there was almost some Star Wars manga that we were working on, because we had a meeting where we all came in and we all pitched different story ideas.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. I'm really sorry that some of those didn't get picked up. I ended up taking some of mine and later pitching them to Dark Horse when Dark Horse had the license. But that was right around the time
my
that they
sister
lost
was
it.
like my sister was really into a lot of that stuff, and like I know one of them was they did like an adaptation, like a sequel to Labyrinth.
Mhm.
She freaking lost her shit over that. So,
Girls
I got
love
to do a
that.
Warcraft. I
The
got to do a
girls love
Warcraft
that
story
stuff.
for Blizzard
Yeah.
when they did their Blizzard anthology.
they did a
And,
couple of them, didn't they? I know they did like I know they did the one for the Death Knights because I picked that up. I didn't pick up the rest of them though. I think they did like 2 or 3 of them because I was
Yeah, I think I was in volume 2. Mine had an elf on the cover.
Yeah.
The volume that I was in.
But they did,
Um,
and I know that they did.
Oh, I might have that.
Like I said, they did like a lot of video game stuff because I know they did Ragnarok, they did Warcraft.
Mhm.
I think they did. Was it Chrono Cross or something similar to that?
Yeah, it
What
was.
happened?
Yeah,
So
they
what
did.
happened
They
to
did
Tokyo
just a
Pop?
ton of stuff. I couldn't even tell you how many.
That's what I want
Like
to
I
get
said, I worked
into
on Devil May
as
Cry.
well, Rob, because
Yeah.
but I want to read this first, and then Rob, ask your question. So Vault says, "What was the scope of your editing duties on books?" So I would imagine each company would have been a little different, right?
Yeah, each one would be a little different. So if you're talking about Tokyo Pop, it was basically localization and copy editing.
Okay.
And then from there, like when I went over to Boom, which I was recommended to Ross Ritchie, the owner of Boom, by Mark Panizia. And so they'd worked together at Malibu. And so I got hired at Boom. And when I came in, the first time that they wanted to hire me, it was for their Warhammer 40K line.
Hey,
And-
Aaron, let me back up. Rob asked the question. He said, "So what happened to Tokyo Pop?" I know they're kind of still around now, but everything we're saying, I mean, they were big. Like,
Yeah,
how
I
does
remember the
something like
shelves
that?
in the bookstore.
Yeah.
It was huge. So,
Well, as a freelancer, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be privy to, on the inside. But I can tell you from other people there and from what I saw at the time, it seemed like they did exactly what IDW has done now, which is where they took their eyes off of, Dancing with Who Brought Them manga, and instead wanted to get into movies and TV shows, and they started taking a lot of the profits from the manga and dumping it into those projects. And those projects didn't bear out. And when those projects don't bear out, well, what happens? Your company has shortages, and then you let go of staff because it's never the executives who suffer, the price of these decisions. It's always the lower end staff. So they lost editors. The more editors they lost, the less books they could publish, the less hot properties they could afford, and it just started the cascading kind of failure effect to where they eventually shrunk down. They still existed in theory and as a company name, but they ceased all of their publication until they came back a few years later, picked up a couple of licenses. I know that they do a Nightmare Before Christmas manga.
Disney. They have a Disney.
Yeah.
well,
They do some Disney stuff now.
I actually doing some research while we were talking about it, and what happened is they lost something called the Kodansha licenses.
That was a huge license. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like almost like all of their top selling stuff at the time was those licenses, and and for reasons that they were never given. They let the current license for that run out around 2009, and they just didn't renew it. And after they lost that, they just kind of started falling apart.
Yeah, we,
Yeah,
So
they weren't
Aaron,
able to
why-
afford it anymore.
we also
Yeah.
just talked about
why did you leave? Did you just see the writing on the wall, or did you just have better opportunity somewhere else?
I eventually got downsized.
Okay.
I avoided the first few, and then they had another downsizing. And I remember getting called into Jill Freshney's office, and she was in tears as she let me go. And I felt worse for her than I felt for me, because Jill was just such a wonderful managing editor, and just such a kind-hearted person, and just a dry British madwoman. I absolutely loved conversations with her. She was quite funny in a very dry British way. But it was neat because even though I was leaving the office where I had basically started coming in full time, even though I was still a freelancer, the editors said, "Well, what we're going to do is we're going to give you rewriting on a bunch of books." And so even though I wasn't coming into the office, they still helped me out by giving me a bunch of outside work. So I remained with them for probably another 2 years, maybe 3. Just doing some other outside work, and then eventually I ended up at working for a toy company, an online toy company, until Boom, came and offered me a job.
And just because Aaron just brought this up and then mentioned IDW too, it does kind of seem like that is the recurring theme between these small press companies, IDW, Boom, not exactly the like Devil's Due. When you said what they were doing, it reminded me of Devil's Due. They were making money off the license stuff, wanted to get bigger, wanted to expand into movies, wanted to like option stuff of their own original creation. And he said that's basically what IDW is doing right now. And it seems like the difference between those companies and then like maybe a Dark Horse or a Boom is they did get those movie options and they did get that influx of money. It seems like these companies, they risk it to get that movie option, get that kind of money. And if they don't have the success, then they eventually kind of falter and tank like the way these other ones did.
But the one good thing about like Dark Horse is they had some IPs that were sustaining, and that they were building off of. So they kind of had some success before the film stuff was happening.
Like you just said, though, Tokyo Pop did too. And I would bet there's a point at Dark Horse where they kind of took a risk, but then like a Hellboy paid off or a Barbed Wire paid off. You know what I mean? And it just gives you that extra cachet and those ties into the movie money that where if those had failed and they dumped a bunch of money into it. Because I mean, look at the creators like Dark Horse had, like was it Adam Hughes, Mike Mignola, John Byrne on all those
Frank
projects.
Miller. They had Frank Miller. Yeah.
And they were probably banking on one of those turning into a movie property. So that kind of seems to be the dividing line between some of these companies like IDW, Tokyo Pop, going down the tubes, whereas Dark Horse is still hung on and had multiple movie projects. And now it seems like Boom with the Berserker thing kind of has their handhold into Hollywood.
That's a lot of goodwill from friggin' what's his name?
Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves.
I think where Mike Richardson at Dark Horse was smarter than anybody else is that I don't think he ever took their comic publishing money and tried to make his own movies and then put them into Hollywood, which is that's kind of like Tokyo Pop dumped a lot of their own money in. Whereas it seems like Dark Horse waited for Hollywood money to come to them. With the Mask. And the Mask was a huge hit. And then that got their other properties looked at, and eventually got Hellboy and 300. So a lot of things like that. Whereas IDW was taking the comic money and pouring it into like Winona Earp. And anybody could have told you that was not going to take off. That was not going to be,
And yet it was a TV series
because they paid for it.
They paid for it.
Okay.
Yeah, they paid for a low budget. Handed it to somebody else
instead of letting a movie studio bankroll it for them. They tried to bankroll it themselves.
Yeah,
well, it's because they were
bad
doing
idea.
so great. They had stock and everything.
There's been a lot of small publishers that have done this. Antarctic Press, they financed their own animation with Warrior Nun, and they lost a lot of money in that. It never became. Top Cow did it with the Witchblade anime series. They tried to launch stuff. Rob Liefeld tried to launch Youngblood, but putting your own money in just seems like it's not the best, the smartest thing to do.
Not a good investment.
Not a good investment.
Yeah. So it's like you don't get high in your own supply, man. You get somebody else. You don't get rich spending your money. You get rich spending everybody else's money.
It depends on how much money you pay yourself as a producer.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You take the company money and you put half of it into your own paycheck, then the other half into the movie project.
The thing like with animation, the overhead is so high.
Yeah,
you really gotta have like a surefire product before you go like, okay, I'm gonna put in the money. It's not about using your money, using everybody else's money. Is okay if you're using your money, put your ego aside and allow people to let you know if it's good or not.
I'll tell you right now, there's no money in animation. I mean, I worked in animation for 2 years after
you're telling me
and so the thing is, like, they have to go a full season, and if it gets picked up for a second season, that's when profits even start. And the whole thing is based on toy sales. If you don't have toy sales, you don't have a successful cartoon, period. So I remember I had this great licensing deal in Hollywood, and this guy, licensor, he had his own animation company, everything. His wife was running Film Roman, like everything was all lined up. And I remember having a heart-to-heart with this guy because we're taking all these meetings, and I go, "You have an animation company. Why don't we just start making cartoons?" He said, "No, we got to get the toy license lined up first, and then we'll start doing that." And I was like, "Well, why?" And it came down to like, yeah, I'm not investing my own money in this thing until, we have, some kind of agreement with a toy company. And I was thinking, if you commit to it, maybe they'll commit to it, and vice versa. Like it's such a weird thing to wait for somebody else to make a move. Like, why would they make a move if you have the license and you're not even willing to make the move? But anyways, it's not up to me to figure this stuff out. But I do understand, from a business standpoint, don't invest your own money, get somebody else to invest it, and so a lot of that stuff just doesn't happen or doesn't become successful because they don't have toys. So any small company, publishing company is going, well, we're going to make animated cartoons. Unless you have an audience and you can distribute that and you can actually have a good business model, it's not going to work, man. It's
well, to your point, Art. As an example, there's a long-standing rumor that's been out on the internet, and it rears up every few years, and it has to be pushed back down because it's a completely false narrative. But they say that Young Justice had its first 2 seasons and then got canceled because execs looked at the demographics and too many girls liked it. And they were aiming for the boys market, so they canceled it. That is not true. It is true that it had a huge female audience, but it also had a huge male audience. The reason that Young Justice got canceled after its 2nd season, even though it was successful from a viewer standpoint, was Mattel had just taken a huge bath on the Green Lantern movie. And so they had paid a huge amount of money to DC and to Warner Brothers for the Green Lantern license. Then the movie gave them the character designs. The character designs were awful. You remember how awful those costumes were? How terrible it looked? Like if they just would have stuck to what made Green Lantern great in the comics, visually, the few little embellishments for the movie, it probably would have done great. But the movie wasn't very good. The designs were ugly. The toys were ugly. And Mattel took a huge bath on them. Well, Mattel was bankrolling all of the animated series, including the Green Lantern animated series. They were bankrolling Young Justice. All of those things were part of the deal. And when they went back to Mattel, or they went back to Warner Brothers and said, "We want a partial refund on these licenses because you delivered a product that we can't tie into because it is unsellable," and Warner Brothers had to cede some of that money back to them, that's what killed all those animated series.
Holy shit!
I'm also curious, Aaron.
It's so many times it's more often about follow the money and follow about who's getting screwed than like what you said, like the theories or the conspiracy theories. It's like if you follow the money on these stories, that'll tell you the truth more often than not. And like Mattel is in it to make money off of these toys, and Green Lantern bombs and all their Green Lantern toys sit on the shelves. It's
Well, and what a stupid fan theory that is anyway. You have a boys property that is wildly popular with boys, and girls like it too. They would kill for that. Disney has destroyed Star Wars chasing that. By making it a girls' property, thinking it'll appeal to girls if we make these changes, and it doesn't. And it's completely fallen apart. Any company on the planet would be thrilled to have both the boys and girls demo.
Do you remember Joseph Michael Linsner's creator-owned project called Cry for Dawn? It had a huge female following.
Yep.
Majority of the fans were female, back then. And so
go look at J. Scott Campbell's booth at any show. That line is majority female.
Yeah. So I don't get why the people today are like, trying to chase this female market, but it's been there. We've had it.
Yeah,
they like sexy women. They like sexy women just like men like sexy women.
Yeah.
Because women are all lesbian. They can go either way.
No, the thing is like women project themselves. Like I look like. That's the thing.
Yeah. Like, I'm curious, Aaron. So you finally get to Boom. Do you remember what was your first assignment, or what was your first role at Boom once you arrived?
Well, this is what was funny was at Boom. So I had my first interview with Ross for the Warhammer 40K license. They had just gotten that license from Games Workshop, and they wanted an editor to oversee it. But when I went in, I wasn't thrilled at the job that I was working. I was working for that toy company. There were a lot of internal problems, and so I was kind of looking for something else. And the idea of getting back into comics was really appealing to me. So I went in and I interviewed for the Warhammer position, but it was only $30,000 a year. And to be working in LA every day for $30,000 a year, I could not make that happen. So by the time they came back to me, the toy company was completely falling apart, and I just needed another job. And so they bumped it up to I think it was 35. And I had a side business at the time that I was doing on a lucrative toy side business on Amazon that I was doing. So
cocaine, yeah.
So yeah, it's like I was selling a little bit of crack so that I could stay in the comic industry.
As you do.
Just a little crack house,
That's how comics work.
You should have given me a call.
Comics work.
A very quaint, family-friendly crack house.
Yeah.
Wait,
They call it the bakery, yeah.
were you selling, by any chance, selling wrestling figures? Or
I was selling wrestling figures. I was selling, it's basically just action figures and play sets and things like that.
wow.
I was selling on Amazon, and I was buying collections of
Internationally?
older toys and then popping them up
Smuggling?
on Amazon. You could still do that back then.
Smuggling.
Get those,
Cross the
International
border.
toy
get
sales.
those WWE sweat figures, man. Those things are selling like
So-
hotcakes.
Oh my God! Remember those?
Remember those things, the real sweat ones?
Yeah, you fill them with
They were
water,
like-
and they would the water would run
they
out
were
of them like sweat. It's
But
so
they were
gross.
the thing was cool is that the sculpts on them were really they were cartoonish, but they were really detailed.
Yeah, they were super exaggerated. It's the first place where you could remove Kane's mask, and he
Yeah.
they made him all burned looking.
Yeah.
But
I always like how adults
pissed on you?
justify their collection of toys. They're always like, the sculpts were so good.
No, dude, seriously, these things were badass, man. Like I would use them as anatomy,
Yeah.
References?
yeah, they all look like
Yeah.
Bart Sears. Like the WWE was designed by Bart Sears. Was how they
Yeah,
looked,
it was
they're
like
all
super
rippling and,
exaggerated. Yeah.
So we're gonna lose Jimmy soon. So Jimmy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. I was curious.
Mhm.
Yeah, Aaron. So you accept the job at 35,000, and is that the reason why you left? Was because of the salary there? Or?
Well, there was a lot of issues, and I'll go into it. Basically, I left because I got fired, and the reason that I got fired was because I wanted more money. I was working 70 hours a week for $35,000.
Ouch.
I brought them
Sounds like comics.
Yeah, I brought them the biggest success that they'd had up until that point. It was really on the Disney license that I had to fight tooth and claw to get them to publish. And I was really unhappy. I felt like I was I had gone to the doctor the week before. So this is kind of I'll jumping ahead just to answer your question, Jimmy. We had a meeting at Pixar, and Pixar wanted to pull the license because they weren't happy with some of the things that Boom was doing. Not that I was doing, not the stories I was trying to get across, but upper management kept trying to push their friends from the studio side onto the Disney side. Like, you need to give this person work. And then that person, and I had an open submission policy. Anybody could submit. And then I would go through and I would weed out the ones that I knew Disney wouldn't take. The ones that I thought that they would take, I would turn in for approval. But they had a lot of people who they were pushing on me who were turning in just pitches that there was no way that Disney was going to do it. And a couple of times they made me force them through, and Pixar came back and was like, what is this? Why would you even send us this? No, absolutely not. And so it started this tension between Boom and Pixar. And so I had to go up to Pixar and have a creative meeting that was set up by Jesse Post, my Disney liaison, and had this amazing creative meeting with Pixar. I was sitting down with Ben Butcher and their guys on the licensing side, and I pitched them a bunch of stories that I had from different creators and a bunch of story ideas that I had from my own head. And we just had this really great creative back and forth. And I left there with solid pitches that were approved for us to start developing. A week after that, I was having really bad stomach pains. So I went to, I took the day off. I went to the doctor. They ran some tests, and they said, well, we're waiting for the test to come back.
It was that damn encounter with the face hugger, right?
That's right. Best case scenario, you're working on an ulcer.
Oh,
worst
shit.
case scenario, you have stomach cancer. So we just want to make sure that we can rule all this out. So I went back into Boom. I went in and talked to Ross, told him what the doctor had said, that, I'm having these tests done. I'm waiting to hear back. Got the big rah, we're going to get through this. We got your back speech, et cetera, et cetera. And that was on a Tuesday. They fired me the following Tuesday.
Oh, shit.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow. Way to get your back, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Did
So
you go
they
to your
really had my back. And look, complete honesty, I was not the easiest person to work with. because at the time, because I had a clear vision of what Disney wanted, of what Pixar wanted, and what I wanted to do, and I didn't have time to take orders from a managing editor who had never seen a Pixar film and was trying to tell me what I should be doing. Who originally was not in charge of me at all and ended up getting put in charge of me, but had no idea what he actually came out of the office and was like, with a Muppet script that we were reviewing, that I had approved, and was like, why are the Muppets making all these this is supposed to be set in King Arthur times. Why are they making references to pop culture? And it was like, do you even know what the Muppets are? Do you even know what a Muppet story is?
Oh, dude. Wow.
This is a guy who I sat down with, and he started to ask. I said, okay, well, listen. The reason we can't do this in this Pixar story is because in universe, in Toy Story, this and this and this. And he goes, well, I've never seen Toy Story. And I said, okay. I said, well, it doesn't really matter. Just what Pixar movie have you seen? Because I can probably equate it, through whatever you've seen. And he was like, oh, I've never seen a Pixar movie. And at that moment, I was like, how are you in charge of telling me what I need to do on this line? You have no idea. You came from Meltdown Comics, where you were the guy that ordered books. I'm coming in from Tokyo Pop, where I was a guy who worked on books. And, I'm the only person in this company who's published outside of this company. And so it was one of those. I was not always the easiest person to deal with, in fairness.
Yeah, well, because you had integrity and you had a vision. Do you think this is, we're just this is an aside, but do you think that that's the problem with the industry right now? Is one, there aren't any Aaron Sparrows. There just aren't. There isn't anybody that has a clear vision, and that will, no matter what's coming at them. See, that's the main thing. No matter what detours, no matter what happens, that you keep that vision and you keep moving forward on it. Do you think that the industry just doesn't have people like that?
No, not at all. I think that Marvel's big problem is that they've hired a lot of assistant editors who are handing stories to writers that they've come up with, and they have no business doing that. Is that me? Am I the one causing?
No, that's me. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think that they have people. So for example, they just announced Weapon X-Men, and it's just a bunch of different Wolverines from around the multiverse. That came from an assistant editor. And of course, the main Wolverine is going to be Jane Howlett, so it's going to be the strong female Wolverine.
Jesus Christ!
That takes precedence over Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, Old Man Logan. Characters that were written by people like Scott Lobdell, people like Mark Miller, who actually know how to tell a story. Those Wolverines are taking a back seat to Jane Howlett because it's this assistant editor's idea, and they hand it to a writer like Christos Gage. Why are you handing terrible ideas to Christos Gage and telling him, make chicken salad out of this chicken shit? Why is Christos Gage not getting to pitch his ideas? Because I guarantee you that his idea will be better. Why don't you have a Joe Kelly or a Joe Casey or a Chuck Dixon, any of these guys, coming in and pitching these stories? Well, number one, you can't afford them. And so what do? You have your assistant editor who doesn't understand the lore of the character, doesn't understand the comics medium, just got a job because they needed to fill a seat and they needed somebody who would take the low paycheck. And not being mentored by anybody above. That's fine if you want to bring in people who are green, but you have to have institutional knowledge that is then passed down to them so that they can succeed in their job. And that's what's not happening.
So that's
while I was working at Marvel, the beginning of the end was already happening because what they had done is they fired all the editorial staff at Marvel, and they kept Ralph Macchio and they kept Tom Brevoort. Those are the only two. And those guys read all the scripts. They basically were like everything that came in, they read, and they kind of edited all these books. They still had theirs as well, but they were overseeing all of this stuff. And then eventually, I think Tom Brevoort's the only one that's still there, is that he was like the last man standing. So they were trying to downsize and get rid of, people with salaries that they couldn't pay. And also probably trying to get rid of anybody that would affect the vision of whatever the leadership wanted at that time. Well, what's that?
Do you feel that, now that Marvel's owned by a corporation and now that DC is owned by a corporation, do you think that they're more focused on investors and no longer focused on creativity? Where where the investors are like, well, where can we save money? How can we increase profit? and we can do it by Xing out these salaries and not caring that those are the lifeblood. Those are the creative people feeding life into those characters and story.
Well,
corporatism doesn't value creativity.
Yeah, this is a big, huge question. We can do a whole show just based on this, because I think there's various things that are happening right now in the culture that are affecting just about every form of entertainment, that you can imagine. And so there's something culturally happening, and it's not just comics. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely money more, motivated. There's the ESG and there's the outside investors that are coming in and having more of a word, as far as, where these companies are going than the companies do themselves.
I got one quick thought on that. And I heard, if you get, there's, podcasts, like podcasts are the biggest thing booming right now. And I listen to a lot of comedian podcasts, but Bert Kreischer, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him at all.
Yeah.
He's like the
machine.
He had a movie out,
yeah.
Machine or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was talking, and it's the television version of comics. He was talking about it, and it's kind of what's going on here with Comicsgate, with crowdfunding. He was like, he's like, I get pitched ideas from the studios, from these TV studios, for doing sitcoms or a movie or something, and I say no. And these studio executives are blown away when I tell them no. And it's because these guys are like living in this little bubble, and it's shrinking on them, and they don't see what's going on outside. He's like, I've got my podcast, I tour, I'm making millions of dollars on my own, doing my own stuff, on streaming, on the internet, on social media. And he's like, I don't need to go do a sitcom on CBS to make money. I'm making money outside of that. And if you look at what's going on network TV, like, it's a wasteland. Like, it's like dying. You can see it dying. And all these guys that would have had like, a King of Queens type a sitcom, or, whatever, like popular
Roseanne, Seinfeld. Yeah, there was
exactly,
a ton of them. Yeah.
All these guys would have had like the popular sitcom on TV now. They're not going and doing that because they can go do their own thing on a podcast, joking around with their buddies, and make more money and control it and own it. And they're getting the revenue streams from advertisers that they're like network TV, these studios, like the bubbles burst already and they don't even realize it. And that's what's happening at Marvel and DC. Like, the bubble has burst on the comic book companies. And if you're not out here crowdfunding, selling yourself, using social media to like build yourself up, it's to a lesser degree. Comics are always at a lesser degree than TV or anything. But like, that is what's happening. There's like a huge cultural shift going on because of social media, because of being able to build your own followers and then have your own advertising into that too. And they're very parallel ideas. And when you were just talking about that, it totally reminded me of what he was talking.
There's a whole group out there called influencers.
Yeah, exactly. It's the influencer generation, basically.
I can't stand
I got to get
Jimmy.
Yeah.
I was going to just say, Disney, when they bought Marvel, they chopped the operating budget by 20%. That's when all the Marvel creators went to DC.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure.
Is that when they start the
money.
ABC payment books? Like, if you're working on a C book, you get a C salary. If you're working on an A book, you get an A salary. I'm like,
yes,
fuck you. What fucking
so many
weirdo
C's?
thought of that, man?
What if I make the C book an A? What's my incentive to make the C book an A?
Actually,
there's no incentive.
You know what? I am going to name names. It was a Jim Starlin book. And I was talking to Jim Starlin, and I think Andy Smith was working on that book too. And they took that book from like a D or whatever up to like a B or whatever. And they mentioned that to Marvel, and they were like, oh, well, we've never had this problem before. We don't know what to do. It's like, yeah, you do. Pay us more money.
We didn't have any plan built in for success.
Right.
I
I do have a question now, because I've actually heard, like you were talking about the
Wait,
editors.
Jimmy, did
Yeah.
you want a parting shot? Because I think Jimmy's got to go.
Yeah, I got to get running. Art, thank you so much, guys. I really had a fun time up here on Pontificators. So
Yeah,
I
good
really
to meet you, Jimmy. Thank you so
appreciate
much.
Good seeing you, Jimmy.
Nice meeting you. All right,
Yeah,
see
you're
you
always
guys.
welcome, Jimmy.
All right,
Tell
thanks,
Renee I
Dragon
said
Rage.
hi.
I will. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.
Yep.
All right, now who's
We're
got the
never
center?
bringing him
Okay.
back.
So the question I was
Never.
I
going to
don't
ask
like
is,
Jimmy.
we you know,
I don't like
you
Jimmy.
gave
I
that
don't like Jimmy.
you gave that explanation about what was what's going to editors, like they're like pushing themselves into the creative process where they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I've actually heard another version of that story where you get these new age writers who haven't really earned their place, and the editors that they're being put with are just basically being made into glorified secretaries, and they're just rubber stamping whatever they throw across their desk rather than actually doing an editor's job. Because back in the like I don't like the way I've always understood it is that back in the day, like back in the the height of comics, editors were the keepers of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
They were they were the guys that knew all the lore. They knew everything about everything from down to like how the characters are supposed to be drawn to how the characters talked. And when someone brought their work in there, they were like, well, no, you got to go back and do this. You're drawing Cap's boots wrong. Thor doesn't talk like this. Things like that. And you don't have that. And in a lot of cases, you don't have that anymore in a lot of places. That's why you get these writers that come in and then they just write a character that's completely off kilter of the way they're supposed to be. And then the next writer comes in and goes in the complete opposite direction, and they're just basically rubber stamping this stuff because they're not given any real authority over these writers. They're giving these writers carte blanche to just do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
So
one thing that really frustrated me at Boom is at the time that I came in, the editor that I was replacing, Paul Morrissey, who I'd worked with at Tokyo Pop, he was leaving because he was overworked and he was overstressed. They had it was like 8 to 10 books, Disney books, that he was overseeing by himself, with full levels of approval at every stage, having to deal with Disney on every level of approval. And when I came in, something that pissed me off was there was an editor that was working on a sci-fi book that was licensed, and it was just smooth sailing. Like they just, the guy that was the writer was familiar with the property. He was known to the show creators and to the approval people, and whatever he turned in would just get across the plate. And they would go in meetings, they would say like, oh, he's the license whisperer. Look at how easily he gets stuff across the plate. Like impugning me because it was more difficult. It was like, are you kidding me right now? He's got one book that's very, very easy. I have 10 books that are difficult. I have one book that's easy. It was Roger Langridge's The Muppets. Roger was so good that very minimal notes. Although sometimes we would get some stupid notes even on Roger's stuff. But
just go heavy on the
one
Rizzo.
guy. He was the one guy that I didn't have to really work hard with. Like he would turn in his script. I would give him a couple of notes. He would make the adjustments. Boom, off to the approval people.
Well, you know what, Aaron? I always tried to be that guy. For editors because I know how hard it is. I mean, they're juggling so many different elements and trying to bring them together in under 30 days.
Well, I tried to be this guy too, because I think I came in under Paul Morrissey, and then I think I felt, you got stuck with me, Aaron. I think this was right in the time frame of the Toy Story stuff.
Yeah,
and I only did a few issues of Toy Story, and I remember I did some Incredibles covers, but I remember you trying to explain to me what was going on behind the scenes, and I mean, I remember it kind of sounding extremely chaotic.
I always tried to be honest with all my creative people. I was always told to lie to you by Boom management. I was always told, well, just tell them this. And so you might get a call from me when I'm sitting in the office with everybody around me, and I'll say what they told me to say. But then you would always get a call after hours, and I'd be like, "Look, here's the real deal."
Yes.
And I did that with Disney, which is how I ended up working on Darkwing again at Joe Books and getting to restore my.
I want to emphasize what you said and why this is so important. Okay, this is one thing that editors do not do anymore. Well, I shouldn't say across the board, but a lot of them don't do, and it's kind of more of an old school thing, is an editor is a liaison between talent and management. And there has to be trust on both sides. They have to appease the corporate and they have to appease the talent. And usually all the best working relationships I've ever had were honest editors that would tell me flat out, even if it's something I didn't want to hear, even if it was something that was messed up, it was better than the lie. Right. So you always knew where you stood and what was going on. One of the best editors was Mike Carlin. Like a lot of the stuff that would come out of that guy's mouth, I would like, I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? Like it's not good stuff. And I do remember I was going from like Marvel to DC, and then it was for some project they asked me to do. And I asked Mike, I said, if I come to DC, I said, can you match my Marvel rate? And he said, no. This is when he was editor-in-chief at DC. He said, no. And I said, okay, if I came over and I proved myself again, could I work up to a higher rate? He goes, you're already at top rate. He said, there's a cap. You're not going to make any more money. I said, how about in 5 years? He said, no. He said, how about 10 years? I said, 10 years. He goes, no. And I said, so there's absolutely no reason for me to work at DC Comics. And you know what he said? He said, yes, there's absolutely no reason. You know what I mean? And I was like, I mean, that kind of honesty, it's like, well, shit, you know, hell yeah, you know, that's great. And you know what? I didn't want to hear it, you know, because that's one revenue stream. And I was like, it's just dried up. DC, I'll never work there again, you know, or at least as long as this policy is in place. But I knew where I stood. You know what I mean? I didn't go over there thinking that something was going to happen when it was never going to happen. So I always do appreciate editors that are honest. And it can't be easy. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, you know, Mike was just some kind of soulless guy that got off on hurting people's feelings. You know what I mean? But the alternative was even worse, you know, not knowing what you were up against. So I always appreciated honesty.
When I was there, so just so you guys know, for those of you who aren't familiar with Disney Comics, Don Rosa is a very famous duck artist. And he is well known in the industry for not taking any shit. Like, this guy is cantankerous. This guy is a Randian. He fights for every step of ground, you know, and defends it, which, you know, I can respect. So we started doing some of his projects, like The Life and Time of Scrooge McDuck. We wanted to reprint, and Disney said, all right, well, you got to understand, Don is very particular, so you really need to approach him in the right way.
Yeah.
And so Ross approached him. It didn't come off very well, and Don sent him a very pointed letter. And Ross came storming into the office, pissed off about what Don Rosa dared say to him, and was saying, you know what, we'll just take his name off of everything. We don't have to put his name on it. We can just print it, and we won't give him a dime, and screw Don Rosa, and was just like raging against him in the office, right there in the bullpen. And I just listened to it, and I let him finish. And then I said, Ross, I understand that you're upset. And I'm paraphrasing here because this was well over 10 years ago. But you know, the gist of it was this. I said, I understand that you're upset, but what behooves us more as a company? To screw Don Rosa over, to piss him off, and then have him say, I've been screwed by every single company I've ever worked for, including Boom. Or will you let me try to work with him, try to, you know, acquiesce to his requests, to try and like form a good working relationship with him. And then maybe best case scenario, at the end of the day, Don Rosa will say, every company screwed me that I ever worked for, except for Boom. They did pretty good by me. You know, I said, what's better for us? And so I ended up working with Don, and I actually, you know, was able to work with Don really well, you know, because I was honest with him and I didn't take anything that he said personally. You know, this is a guy who had been screwed over and over and over again. So, you know, when he would tell me these stories about how he got messed, you know, how they cheated him out of this, how they cheated him out of that, you know, I would listen and I would say, okay, well, how can I make you happy? And so I did everything that I could. And then once I was gone, of course, then the relationship completely fell apart. And Don Rosa had a sign at his table for a while that was like, I'll sign any of my work that you bring to me except anything by Boom Studios. No. So, you know, that's how bad it got. And I'll tell a story with Clint. And Clint, jump in and tell me, with your perspective on any of this.
Hey, you guys, I'm going
wanna-
to take a break real quick. I'll be right back.
Yep,
Okay.
I want to hear your version of it, Aaron, because it has been a little while now. It's been over 10 years, but I want to hear your version, and then kind of I'll have pieces because my memory is always Swiss cheese, anyways. But I mean, I remember the gist of it, but I'll let you tell the story. I was, like I said, I think I started with Paul, and then I got handed off to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a short stint. It was a few Toy Story comics and some Incredibles covers from what I remember. But I'll let you talk about it first.
You were so the way that I, like the handoff occurred, but I wasn't really aware of you until Andrew Dalhouse, who was coloring a bunch of
Andrew helped me get this
the books. Yeah, he said, "Hey, my friend Clint was working on some stuff with Paul." And, since you came on, I don't know if you were ever aware of him or if he kind of just fell off the radar. But take a look at his stuff and let me know, if you can't use him, you can't use him, but, let me know. Yep. And I looked at your stuff and I liked it. And I said, oh, yeah, we can definitely use him. I need some covers. I need this and that and the other. And Toy Story was such an always behind the gun disaster because
that's
Boom was when the license was given to them. This is what I believe it was Jesse Post who told me this story, who was the Disney, he was working at Disney. He was the liaison. He said, when I came in, I was like, why is everything on such fire? Like, why is everything so behind? Why is this, such a mess? And, I'd gotten some of the story from Paul, but I wanted it from his perspective. And Jesse said, we gave Boom 6 additional months on the license that they didn't have to pay for. That was prep time. Because we know how things can get tangled up in approvals, and sometimes approvals take longer. So we said, if you can complete 3 books on each series before you go to solicitation, then we're always at least 5 months out. So if there's any hiccups, we've got time to fix it. Boom solicited the next month after getting the license. And so like everything that they were producing was being rushed through approvals. And, when you're working for Pixar and you're doing storybooks and you're doing all those things that were coming in at the time, you don't always have time to go through everything right away. So I would wait sometimes 3 weeks to get notes back. Then I have to make corrections. Then I have to resubmit the corrections.
They didn't want to carry those expenses, did they?
No, they didn't
want to. Yeah, that's what I
thought.
thought.
No, they didn't at all. They wanted to get that quick turnaround. So with Clint, I gave him a story and I said, okay, this is, here's the story, here's the script, let me know what you think. And so after giving Clint the script, I don't even think he'd had it a day. I get told by the managing editor, we need this book in 2 weeks. It needs to go to print in 2 weeks. And I said, this is a 20-page book. I just gave the script to the artist, to Clint. And I said, and he said, well, tell him that he needs to get it done in 2 weeks. And I said, he's not going to be able to do his best work in 2 weeks. I said, this is what's going to happen. He's going to turn in work that is substandard because you didn't give him enough time. It's going to go to Pixar. They're going to take 2 weeks to approve it. They're going to reject it. And we're going to have to start over from scratch. So why don't we just do it right the first time? Let the book be 2-3 weeks late. I can bring in a sub artist for the next issue because the script is already ready. And, we can get back on track. No, don't want to do that. And at this point, I don't know if it was just stubbornness because the managing editor had decided he didn't like me challenging him. He certainly didn't like to be challenged. But I gave him a sensible answer as to what was going to happen. Nope. Tell Clint to do it in 2 weeks. Clint does his best to get it done. He does it. He gets it done in 2 weeks. It's not his best work, but he gets it done. He turns it in. I turn it into Pixar, and they say no, absolutely not. And so they reject the entire thing. On the call, I can't remember who it was from Boom, but we're on the call with Pixar where they're saying, we don't even understand how you would turn this in. We've seen better work from this artist. What happened? And basically Boom is trying to push for, why don't you just let us print it? And, just what difference does it make? And they're like, well, this is our brand, and someone from Boom said on the call to Pixar, nobody gives a shit what the book looks like. And there's dead silence on the other end of the line. And I can feel the license getting pulled on this call. And so I said, listen, and I got in trouble with this for Boom. At Boom, I got in so much trouble for this. I said, listen, I'm not happy that my name is potentially on this book. I'm not happy. I'm sure Clint's not going to be happy that his name is on this book. Why don't you let us? I said, if we can just go to print on this version, on the floppy, and then I will have Clint fix it for the trade. Is that an adequate, an adequate compromise? Can we fix it for the trade? Pixar, to their credit, allowed it. But that's what set up the meeting where I had to go up there and I basically had to save the business for Boom by having this creative meeting and getting things in line so that we could get back on a schedule where we didn't have to rush our artists. We didn't have to put them under impossible deadlines. We didn't have to do any of that. And a week after I saved the business, I was fired.
Yeah. Okay.
Shortly thereafter, Boom lost the Pixar license. And I was told by Disney that when they said, we've let Aaron Sparrow go, the response from Pixar was just, well, we're obviously very disappointed with this decision. And then they pulled the license.
Yeah.
Wow.
How was it
I only worked harder in those 2 weeks.
Yeah. And the guy that said that, he still kept his job, right? The guy that basically put the
still there to this day.
The nail in the coffin. That guy still has his job. Yeah, that's the thing about like failing up. Like these guys are like fairly untouchable, and I've been in these situations. It's absurd. I remember I tried to do one licensed book, and it was for I think it was Dark Horse had the Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And they asked me to do some cover work. So I had to, because you're working with all these different people. So you're working with the actors too. So some of these actors have they have to sign off on likeness.
They have approval.
Like that. Yeah, so I did.
I tried out for Buffy too.
Yeah, I did like Michelle Gellar drawings and all this stuff. So I tried to do this hybrid of like different styles of like, this is how she would look if she was a comic book character. This is a little bit more realistic. This is a little bit more cartoony, so on and so forth. And I tell you, just in the approval, but I told them I want to be paid for all this. And to their credit, they did pay me. But it was so frustrating and it took so long. I saw the early writing on the wall and I was like, there's no reason to believe that this wasn't going to be a clusterfuck every month. So I just quit, and I did get approved, but I just quit. I said, I don't want to do it.
Was that
because
Scott
it was
Alley?
just too much work. It was just too much work.
You gotta love
I knew it was going to be like what you said. Like it was always going to go down to the wire because the approval rate, those people don't care. So they'll take as long as it's not a priority. It's not a priority for Michelle Gellar to sign off on this drawing. You know what I mean? So she's going to do it the last possible minute and then you're going to get it. And then you're going to have like 2 days or a day to turn it over,
And then it's got to go back again to be signed off on.
Right.
Now imagine that you're Clint and you're doing this and he doesn't even get paid for revisions because Boom didn't pay for revisions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think Dark Horse didn't either, but I just told them if they want me, this is how it's going to have to be.
Was that Scott Alley you were dealing with for the Buffy stuff, Art? Or
no, it was that. Oh, my gosh. Who was that? Not Scott.
I know
it was Scott. It was Scott Alley. He's the one that kind of got busted, right? He's the guy.
He got real. Well, depends on how you want to look at it.
He was the guy that had kind of he had the dreads and stuff.
Yeah, the curly,
trying a little too hard.
Hair. It was so weird.
He had like this naturally curly hair that like every time you saw him, you were like, oh, you went and got a perm, but it was like it was natural curl.
Yeah. You know what? You know what?
Crazy.
This was the early days, man. I swear I did I thought it was. It makes a good story, but nothing came out of it, right? Scott Alley, Dark Horse, right? So me and my writer assistant. We were pitching. I was out of comics at this time, right? But we were doing the Chrono Mechanics book, so that was kind of in development. So I was like, let's hop on a plane, go to Portland, and let's pitch Scott Alley, Chrono Mechanics. And so, I got a meeting with Scott. He took us out to lunch or dinner or whatever the hell it was, and we pitched it. And then, he passed on it, but I still remember this guy was so obsessed with like hippie lore and culture and like Bob Dylan and all this stuff. And I was just like, that's all we talked about. And I think at one point I did tell him, I said, I paid for a plane just for this meeting, just to talk to you.
Mhm.
And all you're doing is talking about Bob Dylan. I said, let's talk about Chrono Mechanics. He goes, well, you know what? I'm going to have to pass on it. He goes, but maybe there's somebody else here at Dark Horse that want to, pick it up. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I've got a worse one. I've got a worse
AKA, well, actually, let me just sum it up. He was kind of a douchebag. Let's just put it that way.
Scott was a piece of work. I remember.
He didn't have the best exit. He didn't have the best exit from comics. There's a lot of stories.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories about Scott.
About him biting people, even.
Yes. Well, that's what got him out. That was the final straw.
Yeah. But what was it, Clint?
Oh, I flew out to Wildstorm I was in California for some reason. I flew from San Francisco to San Diego, got a meeting with Scott Dunbier, sat in the front desk area of Wildstorm for like an hour and a half before he deigned to have me into his office. The whole office was empty, and I was working at Devil's Due at the time. And sat in his office. He looked through my portfolio. All he was really interested in was seeing the Voltron stuff that I was working on for Devil's Due at the time. He paid through that, and then I think the only person in the office was who was the inker on Travis on the Wildcat stuff?
Was it Richard Friend? Or?
Richard Friend, yeah.
Okay.
I met Richard Friend because he's the only person in the office.
The inkers are the only ones that stayed there. So it was like Trevor Scott, Sandra Hope, Richard Friend, right? And then Jim. Jim was so lonely, he hung out with the inkers. Like they all hung out in one little part of the office.
Wow.
I believe it because nobody was in there.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so Scott, you had to go buy like what used to be the old like color like bullpen, and then you turn right, and then his office was as far down the hallways you could get. It was like the last office or something, right?
That one I can't remember. I don't remember the specifics on the layout.
There was no one in there. Yeah,
there was no one. The only thing I do remember is he had like one of those the shelves with all the original art, the drawing, and he like pulled out, and he had some Art Adams, Joni Future or whatever. Original art pages. He was the Alan Moore stuff that Alan Moore was doing.
Oh, okay. I know.
So he had some Art Adams original art pages in there that he let me page through and look at. I drooled over those. So another wasted trip, like your Dark Horse trip.
But you would think like they would be impressed. Like I thought, like, oh man, Scott Halley's going to be impressed. Like I fly in just for this, this lunch and everything. I'm going to fly out that night.
They don't care.
Here's what we can ask Aaron. Like look, talking to creators, getting stuff pitched to you, portfolio reviews. How big of a pain in the ass is that for editors that they don't want to deal with?
It depends, because I had like an open submission policy. So if you could impress me with your pitch or with your art or with, I would try to get you work. There was no hierarchy. Like you could basically cold email me. You could post, like for example, the way that I ended up working with James Silvani on Darkwing Duck was he was enjoying Roger's Muppet comics, and he posted a few pages of a New Zealand, skit that he drew in the Boom forums. And so when I saw that, I was like, this guy's really good. And at the time, I was working with Dave Alvarez on Muppet King Arthur, and Dave had gotten the script late because there'd been some snafus, because I'd been given some artwork by Boom for this Muppet King Arthur book. This is like green when I was coming in the door. I was given some artwork for it, and then I sent that Dave Peterson, who was one of the cover artists, and said, something like this. And so Dave Peterson did those character designs, but come to find out, those character designs were submitted by this voice actor who was also a writer named Sonny Strait, who had not been compensated for them. And so we ended up using those character designs, and he hadn't been compensated. So that caused a whole snafu that had to be dealt with. So by the time Dave Alvarez got the script to start drawing with the character designs, because I think Boom threw the guy some money, and he said, fine, use them. And we gave him, I think we might even given him a credit in the book. I'm not sure that the designs were by him. so Dave started under the gun, and then he had other work that he had to do. So I was, like the first issue, he didn't draw a lot of backgrounds. He kind of like had to rush through it, and I had to get issue 2 underway. And I saw Silvani's artwork in the forum, and I reached out to him, and I was like, hey kid, you want to work in comics? And he was like, kid, I'm older than you are, and so like a couple of weeks went by while I got him all approved. And then he did just a killer job on Muppet King Arthur. And so I had him finish off the book. Rather than him and Dave bouncing back and forth, I just told Dave, don't worry about it. I'll have him finish it. And Silvani was fast. He was really fast at this point. I think he was just so excited at the idea to be back in comics because he's been trying to get back in. Yeah. And that's always kind of the jokes. People say, how do you break into comics? It's like, well, you don't break in once. Unless something miraculous happens. You have to keep breaking in with a new editor. Your editor dies, your editor quits, your editor you got to start over with a new guy, but he wants to hire his friends. You always have to be breaking in. And then when Silvani finished the Muppet things, I had him slated for another Muppet book, but then I finally got Darkwing Duck approved and across the plate. And so I said, I was just kind of giving him work to keep him busy. I said, I want I want to bank some covers. So give me an Incredibles cover, give me this cover, give me that cover. Oh, and just for shits and giggles, give me a Darkwing Duck cover. He did a Darkwing Duck cover. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, it's not completely on model because he's just drawing off of what he could find on the internet because we don't have model sheets yet. I was like, but the gag that he turned in, he gets the property. And so hired him for Darkwing, and had a really successful run with him. Probably one of the best.
What, Aaron? I want to believe that was the most fun job in the industry. I mean, working on the Muppets, working on these IPs, and it just breaks my heart to hear like stories where it isn't quite that. You know what I mean? Like it's like a lot of work. It's like swimming upstream. You like all these things. And I remember I had a conversation with the editor once, and he was, because there's guys that can they make trouble. You know what I mean? They make problems where there aren't problems. And then there's guys that kind of like, they don't confront you and they're just like, it'll iron out. Like they trust the process, right? Everything will kind of work out. I trust this artist. I trust this writer. We'll get, like you say, across the finish line. And I had an editor, and he was just being a pain in the ass. And I finally just told him, I said, you know what? I said, I can do anything with my talent. I could do advertising. I could do, like, I named all these other things. I could make a lot more money. And I said, I choose to draw comic books because I want to, because it's fun. I like the lifestyle. And I said, if it's not fun, it's not worth taking this crap money for. And I said, and you're not making it fun. and he was just like blah 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 blah. And so it's the only time, I mean, I could not see eye to eye with this editor. He's been sent, he was a diversity hire at DC, and he's been since fired. But it's the only time I went above somebody and talked to like the editor in chief. And I talked to Bob Harris, and I said, Bob, I said, this guy's busting my hump over like little things, and he's got some major, major trust issues. And I've told him, I said, at that point, I was probably, 30 plus years in the industry. And I told him, I said, you don't get this far in the industry by screwing people over. I said, I make my deadlines. I do stuff. I said, you just have to trust. And he goes, I don't trust. He goes, I don't trust anybody. He said, I need it all to be confirmed. He said, I need to see it. And I said, so when I ask, where's my check? And you say, you'll get it at the end of the week. I trust you that you put it in the mail, and then I'll get it at the end of the week. I said, trust is a two-way street. And I said, I don't understand any of this. He goes, well, this is just the way it's going to be. And so then I went, no. And I went and I called Bob Harris. And a few months later, that guy was fired.
I mean, he had it coming. Like, look, okay, so I had a run-in with Carl Kiesel when I was at Boom. And
Carl's work. I love that guy's work.
You know what? I've since talked to Carl about the whole thing, and we kind of like squashed the beef. I kind of had to tell him where I was coming from, because I don't think that it, because I was like, after the blow up happened, I wasn't allowed to talk to him. It was just like, okay, we're. But what happened was Wade was writing The Incredibles, and Wade eventually decided he didn't want to devote the time to it, or he didn't have the time for it, or whatever the reason was. But we brought on Landry Walker to assist him. And so Landry would basically, Wade would maybe have an idea and he'd give it to Landry, and then Landry would work the whole thing out. He'd give it back to Wade. Wade would approve it, maybe make a few tweaks here and there. But Landry was doing the bulk of the writing. So Wade comes and he says, I don't have time to do this book anymore. I don't even have time to do it at the level that I'm doing it with Landry. I want to give it to Carl Kiesel. I want to hand it off to Carl Kiesel. And I said, okay, are you going to, I'll try to find Landry something else. But in the meantime, are you going to talk to Landry and tell him, since you're working directly with him on the writing, are you going to tell him that we're putting Carl Kiesel on? And Wade said, yeah, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Uh-oh.
I assume it's taken care of. I start getting pitches from Carl.
No.
They're not very good. And I don't mean that in a sense to impugn Carl's talent at all, because I'll tell you, one of the books that I really loved back in my early reading days was I loved his run on Superboy, the Metropolis Kid. But they just weren't right for The Incredibles. And so I would give him notes, and then, of course I was told I had to push him through. So I was like, okay, I'll send him to Pixar. I send him to Pixar. Pixar comes back with one, and they're like, you can do this one. And I say, okay. So I give it back to Carl, and I say, I'm having Marcio Takara, very, very talented artist. Man, I could tell you stories about how great he is and how hard it was to get him across the plate on some projects, even though he was like way more talented than the people that were working in those positions. I said, I'll have him design the characters that you've pitched. So, and I can submit those to Pixar, but in the meantime, write the script, we'll get going. Carl turns in the script, and there's a bunch of new characters in there. And I said, Carl, I can't have Marcio start drawing this because Pixar's going to want to see designs for those characters, those villains, they want to make sure that it matches the aesthetic. So it's going to actually set us back. Can you remove these characters? And then Carl flipped out. And he sent an email, and I remember this line from it specifically. It was, and I always thought maybe when I do my my crowdfunded, my Kneel Before Doom Facebook, I can use this as a pull quote. But Carl said, "I have no doubt I could create some amazing kids comics, but I can't do it with Aaron Sparrow." And he sent that to Wade. And so it worked out. I stayed on the book. He didn't, because we also had Pixar reject a bunch of his pitches. Like one of his pitches was, it was. Mrs. Incredible is having an affair with Frozone, and Pixar was like, or Mr. Incredible thinks that he's having an affair, or something along those lines. But it was basically that was one of the pitches. Dash getting involved with some kids that were like the mathletes at school. It was just all stuff that Pixar was like, what is this? And so, but the solicitation goes out that Carl's writing this I think was the 8th issue. I got a call from Landry, and he goes, so I picked up previews today.
Oh no!
And I was like, and as soon as he said that, I was like, oh shit,
Wade didn't take care of it.
And so I said, Landry, I am so sorry. I said, this is what was supposed to happen. I'm so sorry that it didn't, but I'm so glad you called me today, because it just happens to be the day that I had to, we had to tell Carl that we're not going to move forward with him. So do you want to do this book? And he was like, yes, absolutely. And I was like, because I wanted Landry to stay on from the beginning. I never worked with Carl, but I'd worked with Landry, and I knew he was doing good work. So Landry says yes. And I said, well, here's the thing. We are now a month behind schedule.
Oh.
And I said, so these are kind of my ideas of where we can go with the story. And I'm sure, you have your own ideas that you want to contribute. I said, but this is kind of where I see it going. And I said, so I've laid out 3 arcs to kind of save this book. Let me know what you think. And so I gave him the outlines of basic outlines of 3 arcs. And I said, can you do the first issue of the first arc and then write the first issue of the next arc, so that I can have 2 art teams working simultaneously? And by the time we're done, we'll be caught up. And I had presented this, and I'd gotten this plan approved by Boom and by Disney.
Yeah, I was going to say you had it pre-approved, so you could do this, so you knew there wasn't going to be a lot of back and forth, and you could actually, get back.
Because if I couldn't get Landry back, if he hadn't called and I wasn't able to get him back, because I was planning on calling him to see if I could get him back on the book, but I didn't know that Wade hadn't talked to him, so he called me. So I was gonna, if I had to, I would have written it myself, just because it had to be done. And so he was like, yeah, I can do it. And he did it. Like he did an amazing job. I don't think it ever finished because I don't think we ever got to the last arc before Pixar pulled the license, but it was so good. It was so well constructed. And he was just such a good sport and a consummate professional that I will never not praise him for that. But yeah, that was what happened. This was the kind of stuff that I was juggling, the kind of stuff that I was dealing with. And no wonder I was working on an ulcer.
Yeah, exactly.
Dealing with a lot of spoiled egos too.
Carl Kessel worked for Krushin for 2 seconds, and when I first got there, I asked him, "Hey, is Carl still here? What was it like when he was here?" And Krushin's opinion of him was, "Oh, he's soft." That was all they would say. He was soft. He was
What
soft
does that
guy.
mean?
Soft.
I have no idea. Just he's soft.
SWAFT, soft.
Yes.
Soft.
Well, years
okay,
later,
so
I walked up
wait,
to
wait.
Carl at a convention, and I introduced myself, and I reintroduced the issue in case he didn't remember, because why would he necessarily? But and just kind of like explained from my end of the table what was happening, and it was all like it was all water under the bridge at that point. So no hard feelings there, but he was kind of like set up.
Carl's a good guy. Barbara was cool too. That was his.
I love Barbara.
Wife
Yeah,
for a while. Yeah, she's really easygoing. But we're gonna wrap up soon. But I have some questions, and I'm not sure if the rest of the guys here have some questions as well. But just like I said earlier when we started the show, there's things I always wanted to ask editors, but really could never because. In fear of losing my job, so now Aaron doesn't really have anything over my head. He can't really hurt me, at least that I know of. So I want to ask you some really direct questions, and you know what? If it's too much, don't worry about answering. But
I'm an open book, man.
Yeah, one of them you kind of already answered, and it's just like recruiting talent, Was that part of your job title, or did you just take that upon yourself? And were you at conventions doing portfolio reviews?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were always doing that. I was always looking for new talent, and because of the nature of the way that the Boom was operating with the Disney license, and everything was always exploding and under the gun, and everything was catching fire. You're over here spinning plates, and then these plates are starting to fall, and you gotta get back over, and so it was always a juggling act. And I was actually trying to get ahead of the game. Funny thing, when Landry was doing the double work, so he was turning in 2 scripts a month, even though it was approved by Boom, I eventually got the question, why does Landry have so many invoices in right now?
Oh my gosh. I hate that stuff. It's so
one Christmas we all sat down and we had to we were told by management, look, we're broke going into Christmas. Tell us which of your talent is most likely to bitch and complain publicly.
That's one of the things
I believe that 100%.
This shit does happen. Oh my.
Is it not
and
like
you know who the first person I slid over was Rochelle Rosenberg. Not because Rochelle is a problem, but because Rochelle had just had a very public fight getting paid from Devil's Due. And I was like, do we really want to not pay the person that our own editor-in-chief in name, Mark Waid, went out and publicly praised for fighting for her paycheck? Like, you need to, and this is all stuff that Waid wasn't involved in. Like, Waid was very much about getting people paid. I always try to give credit where it's due. I've had plenty of things to say about Waid's behavior over the years, but I will also praise him for the things that I think that.
Who was the best?
Hey, what's up, Art?
Oh, I was gonna say who is the biggest talent that you ever felt like you discovered?
Well, he'd worked in the industry previously, but I would say that I think that James Silvani is an amazing Disney talent, and I think that there's no other artist that I could have done that celebrated Darkwing Duck run with. Even the ones at Boom that I didn't get credit for until they got reprinted. And we got to restore our original scripts with the definitively dangerous edition under Joe Books. When we got to restore that, there's nobody that I could have done that book with. He just gets the humor. We could work fast because I could actually work in shorthand. I could give him just the most base idea of what the joke is, and he would knock it out of the park. We really clicked on that level. So I would definitely say James. I would say to a lesser
I
extent,
always thought, like, for me, if I was working as an editor, like, one of the biggest things and the coolest things would be able to say, you know what, I discovered Art Adams. You know what I mean? Like, or something like that. Like, I gave him his first work. I took a chance on him. So I think that would be that would just be, a feather in your cap. My next is like, did you ever feel, because I know you did write for your company.
Mhm.
How do you feel personally? Do you feel like that's a conflict of interest when editors write books, especially books that they may possibly edit? Do you feel there's a conflict of interest, or do you feel like that's perfectly fine?
I think it depends on the company structure, and I think it depends on the personality. I'm somebody who even I'm doing this creator-owned book, and even though it's creator-owned and the buck ultimately stops with me, I get to decide what goes into the book and what comes out. I still hand it around to a couple of friends of mine, a couple of people to edit it, to give me feedback, because when you're close to the project, you don't always see what the flaws are. So I want to make sure that all my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed, and that it's a solid story. There's no big plot holes. There's nothing that I'm missing. So as a writer who's also the editor on a book, it still gets read by other people to give me feedback. And then if there's any kind of dispute, then we'll work it out. For example,
so it still goes through some kind of like editorial process, even though so you still answer to somebody else to go over your script and make sure it's all. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that, because like Marvel and DC, I used to go, Bob Harris or Fabian Nicieza, like, you're writing all these books, and it's like, there are writers that are looking for work. You already have jobs as an editor, like, I always thought like that was kind of weird. And I remember, I think when Quesada started at Marvel, he took that off the table, and he said editors couldn't write books anymore.
Well, that's why I wasn't given credit on the Darkwing Duck initially at Boom, was because even though I was the only published writer there that had been published outside of Boom, they didn't, and I'd worked with companies like Blizzard and things like that on different things. They didn't want to give me that. Now, granted, there were other editors there that were allowed to write, but it was just the managing editor, because he didn't like me. He's like, well, you haven't made your bones. And I was like,
God.
I've been published by other companies outside of here. Nobody here that you're giving work to. It was all favoritism and nepotism. So
I love how you get uses, though. Yeah, I love
comic industry.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I have all these questions. You don't mind, do you?
No, keep them coming. Yeah. And if there's any in the chat, if anybody wants to ask anything, please do.
Yeah, and everybody here too. So I'll ask one more question, and then if you guys have anything, just chime in. But this was always. Not that I'm an egomaniac, which I probably am, but like misspelling a name in the credits, or not having your name in credits.
Ooh,
And I do remember I was deleted. It was finishes. I was doing finishes on Will Spartaccio on an X-Men book, and I didn't get credit for that. But I knew that at Marvel, the people that were in payments and stuff like that, they looked at the credits. Like, that's where they took their cues from. You know what I mean? So that's how they knew what you did. They actually, I don't know what, this is how it was explained to me. It sounds ass backwards, but they would go and look at the comic book. And so whatever your credit was in the comic, that's how they paid you. But I didn't get credit for finishes. It was just inking. And so I remember talking to Bob Harris. And then Bob Harris was so apologetic. But I do remember I had his home phone number, and Pamela still remembers this. Like I said, perhaps I was a little bit of an egomaniac, but I started the conversation with "Thanks for fucking me, Bob Harris."
But that's big money. That's big
money. You know what?
Next book.
If Landry would have called me. If Landry would have called me and said, "Hey, I just picked up previews. Thanks for fucking me," I'd have been like, "Oh my god!" Like, I would have been even more mortified than I was.
but I think I always pretty much deliver things with like tongue in cheek. You know what I mean? I'm never 100%, Well, sometimes, but most of the time I'm not 100% serious. And so we had a conversation. He goes, don't worry about it, Art. He said, you'll get your full royalties. I'll make sure of it. But even like once I pointed it out to him, instantly he went, he's not going to get his full royalty for what he did on the book. So he completely understood and he didn't take it personal. But I know this stuff happens, you know, where either you don't get credit or your name is spelled wrong or something like that. So has anybody come at you with that, or have you ever been?
Yeah, I so at Merck, a lot of stuff was under the gun, you know, like because it's monthly comics, when we were putting stuff out into the shops. So, you know, basically I got hired on to take these 4 issues of Miss Meow and Death Rage that were already written and to kind of polish them and do kind of a new version of them that would go out to comic book stores and to kind of make the universe just a little bit more cohesive. The writer that had come on, you know, they had kind of just decided to do the comics as kind of a, you know, crowdfunding cash grab. And so Murphy was writing them, and to Murphy's credit, there's a lot of stuff that, even though she was not formally trained in comics, there was a lot of stuff that she understood off the bat. So I was able to take what she had, and with, you know, inserting a few pages here and there, adding some context, changing some dialogue around, we were able to take like her vision and kind of like channel it into, you know, to where the comics were intertwined. And I'd never had a challenge like that before, even though I'd, you know, obviously done manga and kind of dealt with translations. It was kind of like an advanced version of that.
But you know what? That stuff sounds fun to me. Like as a creative person, those kind of challenges are always fun to me, because I always look at like things like that when you're writing and they go bad. It's always an opportunity to kind of make it better. You know what I mean? Like you can see it and you go, man, there's a major problem here. But usually, at least for me, those problems always turn into be the big like breakthrough things. You know what I mean? Those problems, if you can get past them, are opportunities to, I don't know, write the characters better or strengthen the plot or whatever it is. And so I never really get too negative about that stuff. I always look at them as opportunities. So that's one of the things I love about this industry is those little roadblocks and then kind of surpassing them and then usually just triumphing, you know, big time over that. So that's pretty cool that you were able to bring that together. I think good editors can do that too, because I've worked with some good ones. You know?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, and I've offered my services, you know, like for example, there's certain CG books that, you know, I, at one point, Kyle Ritter, is that Starblades? Am I getting his name right?
Yeah. Yep. Rittenhouse, the guy.
No. Different Kyle. But on Starblades, I saw he was getting attacked online for his spelling and his grammar in his tweets. And it's like, you know, you don't understand that when you're deaf, you hear, you know, you communicate differently. So a lot of times that comes out in the written word too, it's just a different way of communicating. And so I offered to edit that book. He didn't take me up on it. I've offered to edit numerous books. I offered to edit Groken for Kenneth Rocafort. This is one thing that I think, and this is no disservice to the guys that are doing books. I think that your book, Black and White, very strong. Aaron Lopresti's book, very strong. You know, Wraith of God, fantastic. You know, I think Irene's book, very strong. But there's a lot of guys that are artists first and writers second, and I think that they need editorial help. And I wish that more of them would reach out, because my rates are very reasonable.
Yeah.
especially for indie guys, you know, even though, you know, some of them are making like really good money, like I you know, on their campaigns and things like that. I see that. I see what you guys are doing. I see what everybody out there in the crowdfunding space is doing. And I say to myself, I want to help make it better, because this is the lifeboat that's going to keep the industry alive.
Yeah.
Right now, the mainstream industry is headed towards an iceberg. I know that the Heidi McDonalds of the world and the Rich Johnstons and all the people that, you know, have a vested interest in kind of holding on to their power over the mainstream, or their influence at least, have a vested interest in not talking about it, but it gets more and more evident, you know, and nobody's really saying comics are dying. They're saying that segments of the comics industry that have been there for a long time are dying. And
well, there are people, and they've written to me, because on Pontificators we did we kind of went over the Mark Miller stuff, you know, how he was talking about
yeah.
like ways to save the industry. And we weren't trying to be negative. We were just trying to figure out like what he was talking about and how it could work in a practical, realistic way. Right. But there were people that contacted me, and, you know, I mean, it's all good. And on some level, I do believe this, because some things can be self-fulfilling prophecies, right? So if you say this is bad enough times, then it becomes bad, right? But that's not always the case, especially in the form of comic books right now. There's overwhelming evidence, there's facts, there's reality that's happening. So if you say comics are in a bad place right now, XYZ, if this was a trial, you could prove your case 100%. You know what I mean? So this isn't like you're just saying these things. It's not like hyperbole. There's facts. So I always think that there are like a certain faction of people that really believe that, like, the power of like negativity, like if you just say it, it will actually happen. And I do think, and those people, I appreciate that, you know, but at the same time, we can't be ostriches. You know, there's no way, unless we can acknowledge these problems, there can't be any fixes. So we weren't being overly negative about Mark Miller. We were just finding the flaws in it. And so I guess, just long and short, there are people that really do have a problem with any kind of talk like this. And I don't know if these journalists are like Heidi McDonald or any of these people are like that, because I don't know them, but I do understand that point of
it's
view.
interesting because, you know, it all becomes so political, and I'm coming at it from a non kind of political space, in that, look, if there was a huge market for far left comic books, if there was a huge market for LGBTQ, you know, comic books, if those things were driving the industry and the industry was healthier because those were the mainstream books, then I would have nothing to say about that, because I want a healthy industry. What people don't seem to understand is, yes, we're criticizing these things. Yes, we're, you know, I go on Thinking Critical. I'm on Comics Aficionados every Saturday on Thinking Critical. You know, I've been on Clownfish and you know, do a show, Pop by Culture, with Josh on Tuesday nights, and Max's Man Cave on Sunday. Like you said,
you guys check all those things out. They're great shows. Yeah.
So we you know, we analyze all this stuff, and it seems like we're being really negative, but because the industry is in a negative space right now. And I've always said, like, I'm not saying there shouldn't be comics that appeal to LGBTQ readers. I'm not saying those stories shouldn't exist. I'm not saying there shouldn't be ones that appeal to the far left or you know, or the far right. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. What I'm saying is, the mainstream should be middle of the road, you know, centrist, mom and pop kind of, you know, family oriented, to where you can get the widest audience possible. And when you have the widest audience possible in the mainstream, that's the rising tide that raises all ships, and gives you enough of a readership where you can do your LGBT books. You can do your, you know, bicycling anthologies or whatever it is. They're never going to sell, you know, 100,000 copies or 200,000 copies, but there'd be enough room where those niche books could achieve a level of success, but the overall water has to be high. And so you can't take those niche books and make them the mainstream and expect to have an industry healthy enough to support them. And that's why things are shrinking. The reason manga is successful, because there's a very strong mainstream core set of books and titles and you know, different genres that appeal to multiple people. And then you have your yaoi, you know, for the people that want to read boy on boy. And, you know, you've got all of that stuff like going on within manga, because it's healthy enough to support everything. You want to read a book about
it? That stuff's always existed. American Splendor, or the Freak Brothers, or, you know, like all these
Love and Rockets,
even Ninja Turtles. You know, like these things have always existed, and nobody was like policing them or saying they could exist or they couldn't exist or any of this stuff. Everything that's happening right now is pretty much nonsense, and we all know it. But before we go kind of tangent, I want to ask if maybe Clint or Pedro or Rob have a question, editorial question for you.
I don't know. Like, go ahead, Clint. Go ahead, man.
and this is just my own curiosity. Like I worked at Devil's Due, and I knew a lot of the Devil's Due guys, and obviously we hear about what's happening at IDW, and I don't know how they're still in business. But then we brushed on this earlier when you said like at one point, Boom was like, "We're broke. Who will bitch less about not getting a check at Christmas?"
Ooh.
I would love to hear from an insider the kind of like, and maybe you probably don't know everything about it, but the financials of how some of these small publishers get started and then how they stay afloat. Like sometimes I look at the books they're publishing and I'm like, the sales on these books can't possibly be covering the employee salaries, the rent on their office space. Like how are these places staying afloat? And I mean, I know Boom had the Berserker thing with Keanu Reeves that had to have brought some money in, but Boom's lasted a long time, but it didn't always seem to me like they were bringing in the kind of money that would cover the kind of expenses they were having. So just any kind of information or gossip, I would love to hear that about Boom.
Okay, well, in Boom's case, I know for a fact that they've almost gone out of business a couple of times. And the way that they've generated revenue is to sell off a little bit more of the company. So, you have somebody come in and you have them buy some shares in the company, and you divide it up a little bit that way. I know that that's gone on at least once, if not more times. For example, people don't know this, and it may have changed since, but Fox bought an interest in Boom, and then that interest became owned by Disney when Disney bought Fox. Now, I don't know if Disney's divested themselves of it or if they still own a piece of it. I'm sure they may not even be looking at it.
Well,
Because,
Boom just interrupt. Boom is openly traded, right? It's on the stock market, right?
Is it?
I don't think so.
It's not.
No, I know IDW was, and then they took it off because.
Okay, so maybe it's IDW. I'm thinking.
Yeah,
okay.
IDW is
IDW.
upgraded, and it's now it can't even be on there because it's worth so little.
It's IDW is what's called a penny stock, so they're not traded right now because they are not worth.
Once it drops
Yeah,
below
they're
$1,
Under $1. Yeah.
It's a penny
So
stock.
I saw, like at one point, I had some investor friends who were like, "Well, let's look into buying IDW," and they looked at what IDW's assets were versus the debt that they were carrying, and said, "There's nothing.
huge.
There's nothing that they
Oh,
own that can even remotely offset the debt that they're carrying."
And a lot of these companies are depending on licensed properties, so they don't own any of the IPs. They don't have an IP that's with. And I mean, obviously, Boom is doing that with Disney, working with licensed properties. So in the weak times, they would get an investor to dump some money into them to keep them afloat, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's kind of the thing. This was the kind of the great con at Boom.
Yes.
Was they got the Disney license, and it was too big of a license for Boom at the time. And later when I went to Joe Books, too big of a license for a small. It's just too big of a license for a small company. I feel like it's almost too big of a license for Dynamite, but Dynamite seems to be able to monetize it by doing 75 covers on every book, and that lasts for a little while until it doesn't. But the thing with Boom was once they had Disney and Pixar and Muppets on board, then when they would go into their meetings, they with movie studios, they would say, well, Pixar handpicked us. They'd never done comics before, and they handpicked us to do their comic books. Not true. Pixar would have loved it if nobody was doing comic books because that was just extra work for their approval people. And they were just like, what is happening? What are we doing here? It wasn't until like I had that meeting with them that like they kind of got excited about it because they saw at least that I cared and about their properties and wanting to do a good job by them. But up until then, they really didn't want it. But that's the game that you play. You go in and you say, I think your boy Zach talks about it where he says, you have Mag Visaggio's agent, Mag, goes in and spreads all these Mag Visaggio books on some executives' desks and says, look at how many comics this person writes. This is the hot new writer. You want to buy one of these properties. You want to option one of these because they're the hot new writer because they have 75 books on the table. And what they don't tell them is that, none of those books has ever turned a profit. They've all, they've all never been able to.
And also this stuff, they're not stupid. They're going to do their homework before they invest. So you can say whatever you want to them. The truth is going to come out. Like, that's the thing about like all this stuff. It's like, you can want this to happen, but unless you have the property, it isn't going to matter. You know what I mean? Like I used to kind of hustle, do the Hollywood hustle thing. And now I'm kind of just thinking like, build a good property. And if you build it and it's good and it's successful, they'll find you. You know what I mean? Somebody will find you, and they'll go, you know what, this'll you'll find the John Shirley to James O'Barr's Crow. You know what I mean? Like you'll find that person. Or I forget that Ninja Turtles guy, you know, came in, it's like, hey, you know what, this make a good cartoon toy line and all that other stuff. And that's usually how those things work better. Like when you, because I mean, I've been part of some of these production companies, upstarts and stuff like that. And they all do the same thing. They're like, let's spend a bunch of money on like an office and it get good logo and like good logos for the company, and basically present yourself like you're successful. And that's what Hollywood's going to respond to. And I'm like, okay, you have a fancy office, you look like you're successful, but do you have the properties? Do you have anything that anybody wants? And most of the time it's not. You know, they just kind of have like the polish and the airs of success, but they have nothing. I would much rather just go in and just, you know, have something that they want. And then also I think you're coming from a place of power more if they come to you than versus you trying to like sell to somebody else. Because I think you just kind of lose, you know, your strength when you have to go, hey, can you look at this? This is good. You know,
well, you know,
Boom's
paying for that Wilshire office, you know, and I'm sure that Hollywood execs come in and they sit down in that meeting room and they get passed a bunch of comic books. But in over 10 years, I think almost going on 20 now. Do you know how many movies Boom has actually gotten made? One.
Oh, one. Which one? What was the movie?
It was called Two Guns. I think it was Stephen Grant. That
Two Guns was Boom. Okay, with Denzel.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Denzel and Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, of course. The characters are both white in the comic book, but you get Denzel on. You know you're going to make at least $40 million. So
if Denzel wanted to play black.
Yeah, you let Denzel. Come on, it's not like it's a property that's been around for 60 years and everybody knows Spider-Man is Peter Parker. You know, it's Two Guns. Nobody's heard of it, so no big deal. But yeah, Denzel wants to do it. You let him do it. He's going to get it made. Much like you do Berserker with Keanu Reeves. You know that at least you're going to make some money on the comic book because you're going to get some goodwill there. Who knows if that'll ever get? You know, I'm sure it's going to keep getting optioned, but who knows if it'll ever get made? Especially,
but it doesn't really matter because in the meantime, you've created a very successful comic. Hey, Aaron, can I ask you two more questions and then we can wrap this up? Okay, so
you and I can keep going. If everybody else has got to go, you and I can.
No, it's all good.
No, this is great.
My next one was I always thought this was a brilliant idea as an editor. Brilliant is when you give freelancers a false deadline. Have you ever done that? And you know what I mean by false deadline?
Yeah.
You give them a deadline. If anybody's listening doesn't know, you give them an earlier deadline than the real deadline. So you create a false deadline versus the real deadline. And then if they don't make it, you have that wiggle room, right? You have a little bit of space. But also, I mean, this has to still be very realistic, right? So you don't go like, oh, it's a 4-month or 4-week schedule. I'm only going to give you 3. It still has to be kind of realistic. But
no, it's giving them the full deadline that they would need if they were cranking out, basically like a page a day. If that's what they can do, you're like, okay, you're giving me 5 pages a week. You got weekends off. If you can do a page a day. So let's say, 5 days, I need 20 pages in the month. So you've got a month. You give them that, but maybe the deadline is 6 weeks. And the reason that you give them that extra time is just because things happen. Clint's drawing a book. He's cranking away. He's got, he's got 10 pages done in 10 days. Maybe he's even a little ahead of it. Maybe he's on page 12, because he's in the groove. But then his car breaks down. His kid gets sick. So any of those things can happen. His mom dies. Sorry, Clint, I'm not trying to wish any ill will or any bad stuff on you. I'm just using an example. He's gonna call me tomorrow and be like, my kid got sick. My car broke down. My mom died. Why'd you put that juju on me, Ricky Bobby? But no, those things happen. Those things happen to all of us. We all have things that are unexpected that occur. So whenever I would try to, I'd actually like to be able to give people more time. I'd like the book to be far enough out to where, you're working on issue 2 and we're just now starting to color issue 1. You're almost done with 2. We're coloring issue 1 and we still got some lead time.
Well, the norm used to be, before your issue 1 would come out, you finished up issue 3. So there was always 3 months, and maybe the last 20 years, that has not been the reality at all.
No,
and I think, and maybe Rob could say, they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to invest.
They don't want to carry the expense.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
And they don't really have it. And that's why crowdfunding, this first crowdfunder that I want to do, I would prefer to have the book done before going to crowdfunding, because it would really be really nice to end the crowdfunder and then a month later people are getting the book in their hands. We've gone to print and it's starting to ship. I would love to do that. On the first issue, not going to be able to do that. What you hope that the project resonates enough that you get enough people buying into it and you sell enough to where you've got your seed money to complete the second issue before you solicit it. So when you're fulfilling the first, you're almost done with the second, you can announce it and then boom, have it in their hands right away and you're moving on to 3. You hope that you can get that production going. I think that guys like Iconic have kind of gotten that down to where they're, they have enough capital that they're done with the book before.
I think Eric July is trying to do that, and there's some guys that are trying to do that. But I think, like, when I first started crowdfunding, that was like the way they tried to get you to go, especially on Kickstarter, to have the project done or close to being done. But I think now, it's more like you're a producer of a movie and you need to generate funds so you can make your movie. So that's the way I look at it now. But one last question, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. Okay. So my other one is, let me see. Okay. You kind of hit on this earlier, but have you ever, like, you had an artist that you wanted and you might have like thrown it out there to the artist, like, there's this book, and they're kind of like, whatever. And then you like realize, like, I got to get this thing going. I need somebody to draw my book. So then you hire this other person, right? Mm-hmm. And you're already like, hey, next week you'll have the script, whatever. And then that guy that you originally wanted comes back to Aaron Sparrow and says, hey man, I want to do your book now. What do you say to that person?
I've fortunately never been in that position. Typically, if I've got somebody in mind and I want them, it's because, like I'll reach out to them beforehand and gauge their interest. And if they're not excited about it, then I move on. I've had people come back where they're like, yeah, I would do it, but I've got this that's going on. And then you're like, okay. And then you go and you hire somebody else. And then that project that the first artist is working on falls through or something happens and they come back and they're like, oh, hey, I'm available. And it's like, oh man, I'm sorry. It's too late. I've already, whoever it is that I've committed to, that's who I'm sticking with. I'm not going to pull the rug out from under them because something else happened over here. So
even if that other artist is Art Adams.
I mean, you're assuming that I could ever afford to have Art Adams draw anything, at any company that I've ever worked for, or me personally. Art Adams is, he's so good. There's a couple.
What would you guess Art Adams' page rate is?
15 grand. Yeah, I think his page rate's like 15 grand a page.
Really?
15.
I mean, he can get that. He can get that. He can get 15 grand.
Seems high, but I mean, like, nobody could afford that.
No, he can, but he can do an 11 by 17, and some private collector will pay him, 15,000 for it.
Yeah, no, I know that for sure.
So why waste your time cranking out? If you don't line up enough of those, you don't need to crank out pages for.
Well, this leads into my question for Aaron. Did you ever have trouble getting certain artists because even though you could pay their page rate, you knew that the artwork that they were doing at the moment would sell for more than the artwork would sell for if, like, they were doing boom artwork? I ran into those problems all the time where my boss wanted superhero artists to draw for Phenom, but Phenom could pay the page rates, but I would always tell the boss, dude, they can sell the Teen Titan pages for so much more than the Phenom pages that they just won't do it because of art sales.
I'm sure that's happened. I've never had anybody tell me that that's the reason that they can't take a project. Right now, I will tell you that I have got so many artists hitting me up and asking me if I have work for them, if I know of anybody who has work. It absolutely kills me that I can't, I just don't have projects to hand off to people.
Yeah.
Even if they aren't mine, like if I knew that there were, like let's say Ethan's like, I need to do 3 Cyberfrog spinoffs, but I can't draw all these, and he was like, do you know any good artists? You can send me their portfolios. I would send him a bunch of artists, and hopefully he would choose them. Even though I'm not involved in it, I'm not making anything off of that. I want people to work, and I want the people that I have in the look. My dream for any artist that I work with, and I used to tell artists this at Boom, and as I said, my dream is to get you on a book, to get you noticed, and have you become so successful. Because at the time, Marvel and DC were still strong. I was like, have you jump to Marvel and DC and be making so much money that I have to beg you for a cover, and you do it for me out of pity. That's my goal, or that's my goal. Is I want you to succeed. I want to be able to. I want to have that moment of being able to say, "Hey, I discovered that guy." Like
that's mafia style, man. You can owe me a favor down the line, yeah.
Right? It's like I want to make you successful, and then when you're crazy successful, maybe you throw me a bone. That'd be cool, but it's not expected. But I want the industry to thrive. I love this medium, and I want it to be strong. And I think we all do. And I think that's why we're all stupidly beating our head against the wall still.
Exactly. Well, Art of Roy is he's blaming, he's saying it's RT Bear's fault that Pedro hasn't gotten a question and you hogged all this time. Okay, Pedro. Spotlight.
No, I'm like Michael Clark Duncan in the Green Mile. It's too late now. You squandered the opportunity.
But at least Art of Roy's got your back. He's reminding people.
Yeah, I know. No,
okay, Pedro, come on.
Like, dude, I got nothing. Like, I had something at the moment, but Clint had a better question than I did. So, no, I'm good. I'm listening, man. This
All right, Art of Roy. I tried, okay? All right. Well, Aaron's got this project that he's working on. And so let me see if I can share this. And he can talk a little bit about it. It looks pretty killer. Share it. Neil.
Ooh.
Neil before Doomface.
Yeah, Doomface.
Nice.
Yeah, so this is the creator-owned book that I'm working on. I like if you're like me, and I know I am, I grew up reading The Tick. Sam and Max. I love the Venture Brothers, Johnny Quest.
Nice.
Obviously, I love superhero stuff. And I love comedy. And so, if you read my Darkwing Duck run, that, I was, we really tried to swing for the fences with that book. We tried to make the humor so that it could be enjoyed by kids, but, adults would get something out of it too. This is going, pushing a little bit harder than your average Disney fare from back in the day. So Neil before Doomface is the book I'm doing. This is the titular villain, Doomface. He is a 1980s supervillain. In your kind of in the wheelhouse of your Hordax, your Skeletors, your Primevals from the Ghostbusters. You're very kind of over the top villain, and he was banished in the 1980s. And now, due to some stupidity by some YouTubers, he has been freed from his prison and has come back to claim his empire. So that's one half of the story. The story is actually split into the A and B plot. The B plot is you've got 2 heroes, Kid Notorious and his friend Iggy the inflatable iguana, and he is actually an inflatable iguana, little animal, would normally be the animal sidekick, but really he's the one doing the heavy lifting. And Kid Notorious, his real name Spam. He's the one that kind of gets the credit. He's the face. So this is an image that's never been seen before. This is by both these pieces are by Renzo Rodriguez, and this is one of the
awesome.
Yeah, so this is one of the covers. Renzo's actually drawn the book for me. He's doing so many character designs that are just absolutely amazing. Like I give him pieces of things and he pulls them together into these fantastic images. The Doomface design itself is actually by Tim Lim. He did that for me. And so this is a picture of the 2 heroes, Doomface superimposed in the background, and then Doomface's major domo, Lexi. So when he comes back, she's actually a producer on the YouTube show that and Doomface ends up killing the host. And so he takes her as his major domo to kind of explain to him the way things are now. the way that society has changed, and he's obviously not very happy about it. The B plot with the heroes is they're coming from a small town to the big city to make their name as superheroes. And the conceit of their side of the story is, what if breaking into the superhero business was like breaking into the modern day comic book business? So the first obstacle that they encounter is not even a supervillain; it's the machinations of the Social Justice League.
Nice.
Oh.
Dude,
Is
I love
this
this character design, man. Like, it's giving me like
Yeah.
danger, like from Dungeons and Dragons, the animated show.
Oh yeah. A little bit of Avenger. Yeah, I really
Avenger.
wanted
Yeah,
him.
really
He was
cool.
definitely part of the inspiration. I wanted kind of this amalgamation of all of these kind of over the top 80s looking villains. Because my directive on this is, even though it is a comedy, it will have stakes. There will be actual stakes involved with the story, much like the Venture Brothers kind of did, and it'll kind of lean into like the Tick sort of humor here and there, your Sam and Max, all the things that are my influences. But it will have actual story stakes. There will be evil villains, and there will be heroic heroes, and then there'll be goofballs along the way. Kind of the idea is, what if superheroes were just like you and your friends, bad at their job, but really earnest, really earnest, and they want to do the right thing. And Iggy's his slogan is, "It never hurts to help, even though it always does." So they're going to be on a collision course with Doomface and what he's doing. And Renzo, I think this is going to be the leader of the Social Justice League is the White Knight, just so you guys know. And I'll be reviewing his character design this week. Renzo's finishing it up right now, and it just looks really cool. So all the 80s comedy movies did indeed have stakes. So what I really want to do is, I want to do something that's got a fair amount of tongue-in-cheek commentary on the industry today. I'm sure that people will draw parallels between some of the villains or some of the characters and some of the larger than life personalities in the comic book industry, but for legal reasons, I will say those are purely coincidental.
But you know what? I think humor is what's going to save everything. You know what I mean? Like, let's make fun of ourselves again. Let's because some of the stuff that's happening is so utterly fucking ridiculous. Like, if I don't laugh, I'm just gonna cry. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so messed up. So I think if we could actually, I don't know, ridicule, make fun, but like good-natured ribbing, not angry, not that. I think we can get past it. I believe that's the only way we're going to get out of this.
Laughter can be dangerous though, because the thing is, like, I don't know if you've seen the Daredevil like fight sequence. They put it on Twitter.
Yeah, I did see that.
And dude, like it's slow, and everybody's like bashing it, but that actress is missing a leg.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like, could you have sped up the film? Could you have done some cuts? Could you have it's like, I don't think anybody's like fortunately, and this is what I kind of always like to see. And even with the failure of the Marvels, which people were a lot of people were gleeful about, because they were like, we told you so. We told you that these were not viable characters. The thing that I really like to see was that people were like, yeah, this sucked, I didn't like it, but I really like Iman Vellani. I like her as a person, and I thought her performance, she was really charming, and I think that was the only thing in the trailer that made me laugh. Was I actually laughed when the Flurkin grabs all the people, and she's just beamed in, she sees it for the first time, and she starts screaming, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Yeah, no, that's a good reaction. It's exactly how you would react." She's
a very likable,
just as a person, she's very likable.
Yeah, exactly. But like I don't know, I haven't seen the Marvels, but.
Doesn't mean we can't make she's likable. Doesn't mean we can't make fun of that movie.
That's the thing is, like, the truth will always come out. Is like, people don't like the movie, people like her, and I mean, it's been a pretty universal response. It's like,
I would love to see her doing something else.
Like I think, exactly.
Well, it's like the truth, like all good humor is based in truth. So it's just kind of holding a mirror up and showing how ridiculous certain things are. Like, if you're making fun of a person, in a cruel way, or what, that's not what I'm talking about. Or if you're a critic and you're reviewing a movie or something like that, or just have an opinion as just a person that watched the movie or read the comic book, those are all fine. But I mean, like stuff like Joe Rogan or like Adam Carolla, you know, like really finding this ridiculous stuff and then making jokes out of it or making light of it. Or what's the guy at the awards, the British guy, you know, Ricky Gervais. I mean, the reason that resonated, it was so freaking balls to the wall and hilarious is because it was all true.
Yeah,
you know, and all great humor is based in some kind of truth. What did George Carlin say? You know, it's like truth and then one exaggeration. That's all you need. You know, you know, just kind of exaggerate. Oh, go ahead.
It's also like you know, it's punching up. The things that I'm going to be making fun of are behaviors and the way that people, you know, not necessarily people, but their behavior and the way that they've acted and the way that they've treated fans. And, you know, what if this superhero team that they come up against is, you know, just as derisive of, you know, the people that need to be saved as some professionals are of the, you know, comic book fans that buy their product, you know. So it's about mocking the behavior and poking fun at that and drawing those parallels and coming up with something that's funny about it. So I think that I mean, there's gonna be some people that are mad, obviously, because there always are. Yeah. It's the internet. But I think it's really going to resonate with you know, with the people that like comic books. And
but just on my whole truth thing, it's like truth hurts, right? So when you're when you're holding a mirror up to somebody's bad behavior, we're kind of poking fun at it or whatever. Yeah. But then it's an opportunity for that person to go, yeah, maybe I was being an ass, you know, or maybe I was saying something stupid. Yeah. So, you know, that's the way it used to work, right? When the world was saying
truth hurts, especially if you're ugly. Truth really hurts if you're ugly.
Extra hurts when you're ugly.
Well, if you're a pro in the mainstream industry and you're making fun of the retailer, you're making fun of the customer, guess what? Making fun of you is now punching up because you've set yourself above people. So now you got it coming. So you can't cry about it. I mean, you can, but nobody cares.
Aaron, I see people asking.
I mean, you can cry, but that will add to the comedy. Like if you cry, you add to the comedy. That's the thing. You started it. So
people asking in the comments, do you have a sign-up list? Or are you going to have a sign-up list for this?
Yeah, actually, if you message Neil before Doomface at gmail.com. You'll get added to the list, and then as we put up the website, as we get everything, you know, because we're looking at first quarter next year as launching it. I've got some good promotion hopefully lined up. Some people that have made some commitments to promote the book, and so we're really excited about it. I need to get a couple of covers in, and then Renzo just needs to finish up the sample pages that we're doing. Like I'm picking out like 10 really like solid pages, I think.
Nice.
That won't give away too much of the story, but it'll have some good indications of what the comic's about. And then once that's done, we'll be ready to launch. So yeah, Neil before Doomface.
So launch, you're gonna crowdfund with Indiegogo, Kickstarter, or both. What are you gonna do?
I'm still trying to decide on that because I know there's people that are like, I will only fund if it's on Indiegogo, or I'll only back it if it's on Indiegogo. There's some people like, I'll only back on Kickstarter. I think most people are like, most people seem to be happier with Kickstarter right now. There's a whole case for Fund My Comic. We might do it on more than one platform. I've seen people do that, and I've seen it work out for them.
Yeah, and I think it's a good solid option.
Yeah, and it's not a political thing for me. Like I'm not like, you know, Indiegogo is this and Kickstarter's that. You know, it's like I don't play those games. I'm just like,
you want to hit as big an audience as you can and cover all your bases, and I think that's what most crowdfunders and creators want to do.
Yeah, you're not making this comic and putting all this time and effort into it not to get it in as many people's hands as you possibly can. The thing is, though, I did 2 campaigns or 3 campaigns on Kickstarter, and then when I started crowdfunding on Indiegogo, there were a lot of, well, not a lot, but there were enough people that supported me on Kickstarter said that they wouldn't support me on Indiegogo for whatever reason, you know. So there is some of that, and I don't know if they just prefer the platform or whatever. But personally, since I have done both, and I know Kickstarter has changed a little bit, but Indiegogo was actually the superior product just as far as putting your stuff up and keeping track of the backers, because they would give a backer number. I think Kickstarter does that now, but when I first started crowdfunding, they didn't do that. So if you had a problem with somebody, you had to go through all the list, find their name, and then contact them and stuff like that. But now if there's a problem, you just say, what's your backer number? You go right to the backer number, and then you can take care of the problem. So I don't know what Kickstarter is like now, but when I was making the jump, Indiegogo was by far the more superior product, and it's easier to post things and put the site together. But like I don't know what Kickstarter is like now. So do you have any parting shots, Aaron Sparrow? You got any?
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, one of my decisions might be because I am going to probably go through Murphy with Crowd Control, which is a Kickstarter service started by the person that I work, the person that was in charge of Merck and now runs her own company called Crowd Control with a K, and will run campaigns for you. You know, she's done a ton of campaigns, and so I'll probably end up consulting her heavily on which way we go. Or if you guys have suggestions, feel free to throw them out to me. Parting shots. I am available for editorial for anybody who needs it, anybody who wants it. I have very reasonable rates. I'm working on a book called Brotherhood of the Wolf right now. I'm doing editorial on, which is set during the Crusades. It's a horror story set during the Crusades, and it's got really great art. So check out brotherhoodofthewolf.com if you guys could, and see if you like that project. I'm also working. I'm doing editorial on Unholy Nightmare with Dolan, who did Born of Blood over at Merck. And he and Aurelio Mazzara. Aurelio's drawing actually both projects, Brotherhood of the Wolf and Unholy Nightmare. So working on both of those, and got plenty of time on the slate if anybody needs editorial services and wants an opinion on their script.
Sweet.
Nice.
So Clint, you got a parting shot for us?
Happy New Year, everybody. That's all I got.
Yeah.
You know, 2023 was great. Looking forward to an awesome 2024. Thanks for the chat. Always love to see. We had a full chat in here, over 50 people live for a good chunk of the show tonight. Pontificators is going to keep going stronger and bigger and better and all of that stuff. So love seeing everybody in the chat hanging out, and it's just always fun hanging out with everybody on a Wednesday night here talking comics.
Yeah, and you have your book in demand. Is it Mistress of Mayhem?
Maidens of Mayhem.
Maidens of Mayhem.
Maidens of Mayhem.
Mistress.
You always get it wrong.
Mistresses of Mayhem will be the sequel. If I can get it right. That'll be the sequel. But yeah, it's in demand on Indiegogo right now, so you can still pick it up. It's the beer talking. It's always the beer talking with Art towards the end of the show.
All right, Mr. Pedro Eng, what do you got? What do you got? Party shot.
Well, dude, Happy New Year, everybody. Waifus and Kaiju's mailing list is still going strong. So if you haven't signed up, sign up, spread the word. You got mechs, Kaijus, and hot chicks. What else do you want? And also, Ang's Animation School getting ready. I think we're going to start in February. I'm getting new equipment, new cameras. And I already have the classes ready. I just have to improve the quality of my studio to record the videos. But it's going to go strong. So if you want to learn how to animate, 2024 is the year. It's going to be for free, baby.
Yeah, you guys, Pedro's the real deal too, man. He's worked with some great companies. He's worked under some great Disney animators, and just the stuff he's doing for himself is fantastic. So definitely check out Pedro and Rob Hunter, the greatest inker of all time.
Oh, I'll take it. Thank you, Art.
Yeah.
Death Raider is in demand, and Rob, it's at Rob Hunter Art. I'm on Twitter, and I'm always uploading the latest Death Raider pages. So anybody who hasn't backed it yet and is curious about it, you can always check out my Twitter page for the latest pages. So that's very at good. Rob Hunter Art.
Okay, you guys, and Clint, his book,
Maidens?
Oh.
of Mayhem is in the link, and so is Rob Hunter's. What is it? Death Hunter?
Yeah, that's pretty
Death
close.
Raider. Death Raider.
Everybody go back. Everybody go back. Death Hunter and Mistresses of Mayhem.
So I'm looking
of
for Death
Mayhem.
Maidens and Raiders of
Maidens.
Mistresses.
Of Aaron Sparrow.
Mistress Raider.
Yeah, and hey, you guys, Black and White is also in the description.
Oh, sure, he gets
so
his
click on
own
that.
one right.
Well, it's
Yeah.
easy. It's near and dear to my heart. Yeah, it's in demand right now. And you guys, I just posted an update. Thank you so much for giving me this precious time to put together what I think is the best work of my career. I do appreciate every day, every moment I get to work on this book, and it's all because of you guys, everybody that supported me and this book. I cannot thank you enough. I do appreciate it. And just know the book, all the artwork is done. We got about a third of it lettered now, so we should have that within a week or so, maybe sooner. Just depends.
Oh.
And then it's going to press. So this book will be in your hands before you know it. So thanks again, and thank everybody in the chat for hanging out with us for like 2.5 hours or whatever.
Wow.
Thanks to the super chat, and thank you, special thanks to Aaron Sparrow for
Yes.
hanging out with
Wow.
us. It was a blast, dude. You are one of the greats, and we appreciate being able to hear your career, your journey. And it's not even over, man. You still have years and years and years. So I
Maybe.
can't wait to see what you have
I
coming.
really hope.
Yeah,
Nothing's
with your
guaranteed, Aaron.
what's
Yeah.
that? Nothing.
Tomorrow is promised to no one.
Yeah, don't jinx it.
And what is it? Is it Doomface? It's not Doomcock. It's Doomface.
No. That's what. I'll before we go, I'll say one funny thing. So I tuned in to watch Doomcock one day because I'm flipping through and I discover his channel, and I see that he's named his fortress according to his lore Xanadoom, and I was like, well, taking that out of the comic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you know what? You should trademark it, and then you can just send him a cease and desist.
I would never just reach out to him and say hey, I was kind of doing something similar. Obviously working towards getting it in print. What do you mind?
All right. Randy Howell is saying we need a Steamboat Willie appearance in one of your comic books. So I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Possibly.
No. Absolutely not.
No.
I'm not doing that.
Here is
I'm not
Pedro's.
touching that.
Yeah, here's Pedro's sign up. So thank you,
Yeah.
Eric. So thanks again, everybody in the chat. And we will see you next week on another exciting Pontificators, 8 Eastern Standard Time. And this group right here, we're going to see them next week on the show. So you guys take care, be good to each other, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Thanks.